In a gloomy demon castle, a demon queen and a hero were fighting. As they threw blow after blow, they didn't understand why the opponent's sword hadn't broken yet. Jumping back, the hero asked who made the sword for the demon queen. But she was also interested in who made the sword for the hero. Both swords had the same mark on them. It seems that their swords had the same author. After realizing the situation, they realized that they were on par, and their swords were equally effective. Fighting on was a waste of time. Then the hero and the demon queen agreed that their generation would not fight a war between each other. They also decided to tell the blacksmith about it. If he is dissatisfied with them, it will deter the war the most. After saying their goodbyes, the hero and the demon queen left. After making a punch, the man sighed. Two girls entered the room and invited the man to have dinner. It's been a long time since this man started living in this world. In his previous life, the man died. When he saw the cat that the truck was rushing at, he rushed to save it. The only reason he jumped was because the man liked cats. Opening his eyes, the man found himself in a strange place. The girl's unfamiliar voice called out to him. Turning around, the man saw a beautiful girl and asked what was going on. The girl was a goddess, and she explained that the man died in that world. After realizing this, the man didn't understand why he was so cold. Usually when a creature dies, its soul decomposes in the form of new resources, but the goddess has so far held back this process. The cat that the man saved before dying was a goddess. She watched the worlds, traveling through parallel worlds and observing whether there is something in the world that can negatively affect other worlds. For the world where a man lived, the goddess watched in the form of a cat. She screwed up a little and almost died, but the man saved her. The goddess explained to the man that if she died, she would be fine, only her temporary body would suffer. The man shouldn't have died in that world, but because of his death, a hole appeared. And to compensate for the man's death, the goddess wanted to create a new creature. It would have been easier to just resurrect the man in his world, but there was a problem. The goddess had already seen his death, and what she saw was still being sent and stored in the world. Therefore, the man's death is already recorded in that world. But in other worlds, his death has not yet been recorded. So she wanted to move men to another world. The man realized that the goddess wanted to make a substitute for existence. But the man wondered why she was doing all this. The goddess replied that he had died because of her carelessness, and she was not comfortable. Also, as a token of gratitude, she wanted to give the man some sort of advantage in the new world. She wanted to give him the knowledge and skills he needed to live in this world, and a place to live in. The goddess asked what kind of life a man wanted to live. The man was a lonely man with no family, worked as a programmer in the so-called Black Company. When he came to his senses, he was already an old man with white hair all over his body. The only person who will care about his death is his boss. But they'll just find a replacement anyway. In that world, he doesn't have anything that a man will miss, and in the world, no one will miss him. If only a man had a second chance in life. The man had a hobby of creating things, and he would like to use this as a source of income. The goddess could do it. But the man also loved cats, so much so that he is ready to sacrifice his life for them. So he wanted to live in peace in that world with his cat. The goddess asked him what kind of things he wanted to create. The man has always been interested in blacksmithing, but he has never had the opportunity to try his hand at it. After thinking about it, the goddess decided that she would prioritize physical characteristics and invest the remaining resources in language, production, and a little magic. A ball of light appeared in the goddess' hands. In an instant, the ball broke up into many particles. Suddenly, the man began to drift far away. After thanking her, the goddess disappeared from sight. Tall trees and unfamiliar terrain. Opening his eyes, the man stood up and felt a severe pain in his head. Suddenly, a large stream of information passed through the man's mind. From the head to the tips of the finger, a large flow of information passes through the man that he did not know before. A great flood of information came to his mind and body. Now the man understood why his head hurt so much. The life he had led before was over. When the man was released, he warmed up. Standing up, he felt a strange feeling as if new knowledge and experience had passed through his body. Looking back, the man saw his house, a medium-sized medieval wooden house. It looked like it was the house that the goddess had prepared for him. Opening the door, the man looked inside. Inside, he saw a simple room and a kitchen with various ingredients, as if there was everything for life. It should have been enough for the first time. There was no electricity, no running water, and no sign of a well. So the man will have to look for a water source. Looking up, the man saw another room in the house. Once inside, the man saw a large furnace, an anvil, and many more tools. It looks like it was his workshop. There were all the necessary materials and tools. When the man took the hammer in his hand, he immediately knew what to do with it. The instrument fit perfectly in your hand. It looks like this was what is called priority mode. In other words, the goddess has invested a little in magic. It was already noon. It was time to make dinner. After the man ate, he wanted to explore the area outside and find a water source. The kitchen was filled with various products, dried meat, and root vegetables. In his previous life, the man lived alone, so he could cook some simple food. After slicing the food, the man wanted to fry them. Looking down at his hand, the man concentrated and lit the fire. He was surprised. Although the fire was too small, and the man could not use it for a long time to heat up to high temperatures, but the light could be useful as a lighter. The man could still use magic. After preparing the dish, the man ate. The food was tasteless, not good, but not terrible either. The man took a bag and some other tools. He hoped to find a water source nearby. The man had long hair that got in the way a little, so he tied it up in a small ponytail. After leaving the street, the man went into the forest. In order not to get lost, he left marks on the trees. Looking up, he saw a green squirrel, and it really looked like another world. I wonder what kind of forest it was and how big it was. Whether there are towns or villages nearby. After tasting the wild apple, the man realized how much effort farmers made to grow them sweet. After walking for a while longer, the man found medicinal herbs. The fact that the man immediately understood this meant that it was part of the important knowledge that he had received. It was still strange to know something I didn't really know. Taking some medicinal herbs, the man walked on. It seemed that both his mind and body were gradually getting used to this world. Coming out of the forest, the man saw a large pond. About a 15-minute walk from the house was this reservoir. After tasting the water, the man realized that the water was fresh. Looking up, the man saw his reflection on the water. It looks like the goddess has made him look a little younger, and his body is also lighter than it was before. Somewhere around 30 years old. After taking a closer look, the man saw a fish in the water. It looks like he might have gone fishing. Suddenly, the man heard rustling noises. Looking around, he saw a large rock. Coming closer, the man became alert. Peeking around it, he saw the girl. The girl was lying on the grass. It looks like she was unconscious and badly injured. As he got closer, the man realized that she was covered in blood. The girl was a beastman, a tiger. The girl will not survive if the man carries her home. Realizing this, he hoisted her onto his back and immediately carried her into the house. The girl was much lighter than she looked. When he got home, the man put the girl down and started looking for sewing tools and cloth. Taking sewing tools, the man tore the cloth and made bandages out of it. It was necessary to sterilize the needle in boiling water. The man put the girl on the table and checked her for wounds. The worst wound was on his stomach. Thanks to the priority mode, the man knew exactly what to do. After pouring hot water into a bucket, he inserted the thread into the needle. The man wanted to sew up the wound with a sterilized needle and thread. The man started the process. When he was done, he treated the wound with medicinal herbs and laid the girl on the bed. After feeding the girl a little, he sat down next to her. It seems that her condition has stabilized. The man managed to give her first aid, even though he was a novice. The man was worried that if a scar remained on the girl's body, he would only have to apologize. But he was glad that the herb he had gathered earlier worked well for disinfection and for pain suppression. The man was very tired. Bowing his head, the man thought that now he will live in this world. He needed to prepare for the life of a blacksmith. There was still a lot to do, but since this was his second chance, he wanted to make the most of life and live in comfort, not as a workaholic. After thinking a little more, the man began to feel sleepy, and he fell asleep. When the man woke up in the morning, he opened his eyes and saw the girl sitting on top of him. It looked like she was angry. It was the beginning of his new life. The girl didn't put much effort into holding the man, so she wasn't trying to kill him. But what was more important now was the wound on her stomach. The man asked her how she was feeling. The girl was surprised, but answered. The wound still hurt, but it seemed to be healing. The man's weight dropped from his shoulders. He was relieved. But it was too early to relax. The girl was still angry. She was angry that she woke up with no clothes on. But the man reassured her that it was necessary to properly treat the wound and that he did not touch her anywhere except for the wound. He swore on his life, and the girl let him go. She sat down on the bed. The girl said that the man did not smell of lies, and for the time being she would trust him. The man didn't understand what this meant, and she explained that it was as if the heart was beating faster. Taking the jacket, the man gave it to the girl to get dressed. Her old clothes were heavily stained with blood, so the man had to cut them into bandages to give the girl first aid. After getting dressed, the girl asked the man about the house and what the man was doing here. The man said that he would like to be engaged in blacksmithing, but he settled here only yesterday. She had never seen a house in this forest before. The man explained that the house was already here when he came to this place yesterday. The girl said that she doesn't often visit this part of the Black Forest, so maybe she missed it. The man had some information about the Black Forest. This place is located to the east of the forest. Usually, the girl wandered in the north or west, but yesterday, when the girl stopped here, she came across a big black bear. After that, she was severely injured. If the man hadn't found her yesterday, the bear would probably have torn her body to pieces. It was dangerous, and the man was lucky that he wasn't attacked yesterday. The man asked the girl that it takes some time for the wounds to be completely healed. She said that the body of beastmen is much stronger than that of humans, but with such an injury, she will not be able to hunt and wander around the forest for about 2 weeks. The man offered her to stay with him for the time being. As he said, he had only moved into this house yesterday, and so he needed an assistant to help him with the housework and blacksmithing. In return, the man would provide her with housing and food until she fully recovered. It wasn't a bad deal. The girl thought about it and agreed, as long as it doesn't smell suspicious. She will live with him until her wound is completely healed and she can't move properly. After that, she will think about everything. From that moment on, the girl was under his care. The man asked the girl's name. Her name was Samia, which was a pretty name, but she didn't like it. She didn't think it was cute, and she wished she had a better name. The man said that even if she didn't like her name, it was given to her by her family and it suited her. Samia asked the man's name. He introduced himself as Izo Tanuya, which was his name in his previous life. The girl said that he was from the north, even had a surname. It seems that in this world, Asians like Izo lived in the north. The girl apologized for poking her nose in, but surnames were rare in these parts. But the man wasn't hurt, so it was all right. Apparently, men with surnames had some kind of status and the estate in which they live. It was awfully strange to have a blacksmith shop like this, but it will be fine if Samia can accept everything as it is. Izo said it would be nice if Samia called him by his first name. She did just that. After some time, the man decided to try to work in his blacksmith shop. He put on an apron and poured coal into the stove. It should have been enough to prepare. First, Izo wanted to try making a small knife. First, it was necessary to start a fire in the furnace. Izo did it with magic. Then he had to keep the temperature up until the charcoal caught fire, which was easy enough with magic. After that, Izo used wind magic. It supplies oxygen in the same way as a blacksmith's bellows. Since the fire wasn't too strong, Izo could handle it on his own. Even so, he was much hotter than he had expected. As soon as the temperature reaches 800 degrees, the color of the steel will change, and then Izo will be able to start forging. He knew what to do, even though it was his first time doing it. Taking the iron, Izo placed it on the coals and heated it up. Thanks to his preferred mode, he could tell at a glance when the iron would be ready. After pulling out the iron, Izo took the hammer and began to beat it into shape. He hit it so hard that he was surprised. It was strange. Yesterday when he carried Samia home and earlier when he was carrying water jugs. Even when he was 30 years old, he wasn't that strong. He's definitely gotten stronger. After polishing the blade with a file, he was finally able to sharpen it on the grindstone. Step by step, Izo used the knowledge and skills bestowed upon him and transformed it into his real experience, making his body the body of a master, which was reflected in the edge of the blade. After a while, everything was ready. It was his first creation. He couldn't wait to try it out on something. He picked up a small stack of hay and placed it on the board. With a little pressure, he cut the hay together with the board. The knife was insanely sharp. None of the knives in his previous home had been so sharp. Was it because of the preferential treatment? This knife was too dangerous, and Izo decided to use it in self-defense. It looked like if he was using preemptive mode skills, the knives were cutting too well. He couldn't sell such a dangerous knife in the market. Sitting down on the street, Izo decided that tomorrow he would make 3 more types of knives. One is even sharper than the one made today. The other is not as sharp, and the last one is only slightly sharp. Izo wanted to show this knife to Samiya first, then decide what to do with it. He entered the house and found Samiya asleep. He went to the bed and woke her. When she got up, she said that no matter how much sleep she got, it wasn't enough. Izo asked her how she was feeling and told her that she didn't need to move much if she wanted to restore her blood levels. It was already dark, so Izo lit a candle in the lamp with magic. Samiya was surprised that he could also use magic. Izo told her that sleep was important, but not to forget about food, and handed her a plate of food. They sat down at the table and began to eat. There was roast meat and vegetables for lunch. Izo didn't cook very often, so it was the best thing he could do. In this world, he still needed money to buy food, firewood, and materials for the forge. The next day, the knives were finally ready. Izo called Samiya to help him. She didn't know much about blacksmithing, but Izo just needed her to try out the knives he made. Samiya took the bluntest blade and cut a small sheaf of hay with ease. Samiya said it was an amazing knife. Izo was definitely skilled. After saying that, she took the next blade and tried to cut with it. Samiya was surprised. The knife cut too well. Taking a third knife, she began to cut the third sheaf. With a light touch to the hay, she sliced it open in no time. She was in shock and didn't understand how it could be so sharp. Her reaction confirmed that the knife was very sharp. The priority mode that Izo received allowed him to use the power of a first-class blacksmith. Izo said that if he wanted to sell them, he would have to think about using them. Samiya said that she could buy it, it would be very useful for her on the hunt. But Izo said she could just take the knife. Samiya was very happy about it. Izo also wanted to make her a scabbard, but that would take some time. Now he decided what to do next. He will be able to make more knives by lowering the level. And judging by Samiya's reaction, it was a very good level to sell. First, Izo wanted to make more knives and farm implements, then sell them to make a living. He had heard that there was a town beyond the forest with a busy market on weekends. From that moment on, Izo's blacksmithing business started. Izo rewound Samiya's wound and asked how she was feeling. She was already able to move normally, but she couldn't go hunting. Izo suggested that Samiya go to the city tomorrow. A week has passed since that conversation. During this time, Izo made a pair of knives, hoes, and sickles to sell in the city. Samiya's recovery is going well, and sometimes she and Izo would go for walks in the woods. Through these walks, Izo learned about the area and the ecology of the surrounding area. He was pleased to see all his new knowledge put into practice. He was worried that they might encounter wild wolves or wild boars along the way, but Samiya said it would be fine because she could smell that Izo was very strong. Samiya was a tiger, so Izo thought she was stronger than him. Apparently, he hadn't fully realized his full strength yet, but it seems that Izo was strong enough to survive in this forest. They would walk through the forest for another 2 hours, until they came to a major road, and from there it would take another hour to reach the city. Due to the fact that Samiya was a beastman, they didn't encounter any animals or bandits along the way. The road to the city passed without incident. While walking on the main road, Samiya and Izo saw a large stone wall. Just beyond this wall was a large flea market. In this city, the market is located outside the outer walls and merchants gather there every day. Since the city existed mainly due to trade, it was not necessary to pay for entry and exit. As he approached the entrance, a guard called out to Izo and Samiya. Izo came over and asked what he wanted from them. The guard hadn't seen them before and was curious about the purpose of their visit to the city. Izo explained that he was a blacksmith and had come to sell his tools at a flea market. The guard wanted to take a look at the tools and took out a knife from its scabbard and let them enter the city. After going inside, Izo went to the flea market. He had to pay 1 silver coin to enter the flea market. After doing this, Izo received a trading counter and a wooden sign with a trade permit. The place was taken by the one who came earlier. The best seats had already been sorted out, but Samiya noticed a nice spot, so they set up a counter. 2 hours later, nothing was bought from them. Izo tried to attract customers and extolled his products, but nothing came of it. Previously, he only worked as a programmer and wasn't used to being a salesperson. Samiya tried to cheer Izo up, but so far she couldn't. Suddenly, the guard who had previously stood at the entrance appeared in front of them and asked how the trade was going. Izo said he wasn't sure yet. The guard was glad that the knife hadn't been bought from him yet and asked him to sell it to him. He explained that when he examined their luggage, he saw how sharp their knives were. He had a knife at home, but it was already too bad to fix or sharpen. Izo handed one of the knives to the guard. After looking at the knife, the guard said that it was a really good knife and found out the price. Izo wanted to sell it for 5 silver coins. The guard was surprised that the price was too low for such a good knife. But Izo consulted with Samia, and they decided not to put too high a price to earn anything. The guard bought a knife. It was the first time for Izo to get paid for something he had done on his own. The guard said that if Izo's knife was sharp enough, then he would recommend it to the other guards in his unit. Izo was delighted and gave a guarantee that the knife would be very sharp. They said their goodbyes, and the guard went back. Izo was very happy that his knife was bought. 3 hours later, they still hadn't sold anything else. It seems that the demand for agricultural products in this town was low. Izo started to get ready when a man's voice called out to him. Izo turned to see a small crowd of guards standing in front of his counter. He didn't understand what they wanted. He shouldn't be in trouble. One of the guards asked Izo if Marius had bought his knife from him. It seems that Marius was the name of the guard who bought a knife from Izo 3 hours ago. The guard was glad that he had finally found this merchant. The guard asked if Izo still had the knives, and if so, if he could sell them everything he had. Izo was very surprised. Other guards said that as soon as Marius returned from his lunch break, he immediately started showing off his new knife. The knife was very sharp, a first-rate thing. All the guards who came to see Izo needed a knife like this. Ace still had 8 knives left, which he sold for 8 silver coins. The guards bought knives and were glad that the knives met their expectations. After saying their goodbyes, the guards went back. Izo noticed the merchant's gaze sitting next to him. Turning around, Izo apologized for the inconvenience. But the merchant didn't expect an apology, he was just a little surprised. The merchant congratulated Izo on being able to sell everything. Samia was glad that Izo was able to sell all of his knives. Since they had all sold out, Izo would need some time before he could replenish their supplies again. Now Izo was confident that he could do more than just make repairs and take orders. He wanted to try making a longsword next. After all, if he can make a deal with a merchant, he will increase the range of goods he can sell. Now it was important for Izo to try out farming tools and axes on his own. He also wanted to make Sami her own room. When they got home, Samia asked Izo if he could make arrowheads. She thought it would be nice to have his arrows for hunting when she recovered. Izo agreed and Samia thanked him. Tenuya Izo, who was probably over 30 years old, couldn't resist the compliments. Today, Izo wanted to focus on making knives and then making tips for Samia. Izo made a mold for the tips out of clay. Then I filled it with heated steel and waited for it to cool down. Izo suggested that Samia take one of the items and sharpen it. Then attach it to the handle when it's finished. Izo also wanted to make a big saw to cut down trees. After that, Izo wanted to improve the axe that he had tried to sell before. But for Izo's saw, it was necessary to cut out the saw teeth all day. The next day, Izo was standing in front of a tree with an axe that he wanted to test. Izo took a firm grip on the axe and swung it at the tree. One blow was enough to sever the entire trunk. The log house was perfectly flat, and the axe was very sharp. He had to be careful with the axe, otherwise Izo's life might end soon. After preparing the fallen tree, Izo and Samia chopped it into small pieces with an axe. Taking a saw, they began to saw the log. Samia hadn't fully recovered yet, so Izo was very worried about her. They had to pull a large saw back and forth to cut the log in half. The saw cut the knife like tofu. They made short work of the logs. If they work at the same pace, they'll be done by the end of the day. This usually takes longer, but Izo's tools were amazing. But the power of creating these amazing tools lies in the basic knowledge of Izo. It's just a privilege that he had. In his second life, Izo wanted to succeed because of his own efforts, not just because of his privilege. But even so, he was grateful that in the beginning, he could use the gifts he received. After all, Izo considered himself just a guest in this world. Therefore, he will use this power to live a normal life and will not abuse these abilities. When Izo was sitting in the workshop making arrows, Samia asked. He used to say that he wanted her to live here with him. And Samia wanted to know if his offer was still valid. Samia was very happy that Izo had helped her. Even after Samia came here, she couldn't do anything at all, but it was fun to help Izo with his work. And they chatted interestingly during the meal. Samia also liked their runs. Most of all, Samia liked to watch Izo work while making things. So Samia wanted to live together, just like Izo suggested. Izo smiled and said that he would be happy if she stayed with him. Samia was very happy and couldn't contain her emotions. But Izo wanted to please her with one more thing. The arrowheads Samia had requested were already ready. She immediately ran to watch them and was happy. Slowly, but surely, Izo's place in this world was gradually forged, the countless, small decisions he makes now and in the future. He hoped that this would be the first moment in a long line of these beautiful moments. In the town where Izo traded, two men were discussing a knife in one of the taverns. The dwarf girl accidentally overheard their conversation and became interested in the master of this knife. As she approached the two men, she asked if she could take a closer look at this knife. Samia was going hunting to try out her new arrows. Since she had only just recovered, Izo told her to come right back as soon as she sensed danger. Izo wished her luck and Samia went hunting. After Samia left, Izo went to work in the blacksmith shop. He needed to replenish his inventory of items to sell. Therefore, starting today, he will start making not only knives, but also long swords. When Izo made sure that the female forms he had prepared yesterday were dry, he split them in half and removed the male form. Then he put the pieces back together and put them in the sand barrel. Then he poured molten iron into it. When the iron was cold, Izo removed the clay and took out the iron. After that, he removed all the burrs around the iron with a hammer and file. Next, Izo heated it up and changed its shape slightly. Finally, the sword is polished, the blade sharpened, and then the finishing touches are made. The tsuba is attached and wrapped with leather around the handle, then the scabbard is made of wood. Usually all this work is done by different specialists. But thanks to the priority mode, Izo could do some things on his own in this workshop. Everything was ready. Izo put his mark on the sword. The model was cute Dory-chan, who was Izo's favorite in SNS. The first stage was completed. Over the next few days, they will mass-produce regular models and lower-ranked scabbards. Izo was happy with his work and stared at it. Suddenly, Samia came home and scared him. After greeting Samia, she looked happy. It was nice to have someone meet you at home. This happiness Izo couldn't achieve in that world. Samia said that she had killed a tree deer. She pulled out the organs and soaked it in the lake so they could come back for it tomorrow morning. Izo asked her about the arrows and the knife. They were great. The arrows went deep, and the knife was also easy to work with. The next morning, they took the deer back to the house and butchered it. Samia showed them how to properly butcher a deer, and they got to work. Samia's skillful hands combined with the sharpness of Izo's knife. In the blink of an eye, the kasha was removed and the meat was cut out. Butchering the meat wasn't difficult. When they butchered it, it looked exactly like the meat Izo had bought at the store. Izo asked what Samia had done with the organs she had taken out of the deer. She told me that she had left the bones and guts in the forest, where the wolves would come and eat them. The meat was delicious. Samia wanted to catch the bird next time. Plentiful food is one of the most important conditions for a quiet life. They took the rest of the meat back to the workshop to dry. The next morning, Izo offered to help Samia in the workshop if she was out of work. Since Izo asked Samia for help, they made enough merchandise to head back to the city. The next day they went to the city. There they met Marius. Marius saw that they had brought their swords and said that he would come and see them later. When they arrived at the place, Izo told Samia to go shopping and gave her some money. A man came up to Izo's shop to look at his swords. After looking, the man said that he wanted to buy 4 pieces. He explained that he was a traveling merchant, and he would like to keep one for himself and sell the rest elsewhere. If Izo can sell them elsewhere, it might be a chance to expand his business. Maybe one day, when he and Samia had saved up enough money, they would go on a business trip. After that, Marius brought his colleagues here to help Izo. The usual model of longswords was sold out. All that remained was the top-end model, which Izo wasn't going to sell. As Izo was about to leave, Samia noticed a dwarf in the crowd. Samia had only met a dwarf once before, when she'd taken one to the road. Dwarves were rarely seen here. Noticing them, the dwarf girl moved quickly in Izo's direction. As she approached, she asked Izo if he had made knives for the guards. The girl asked to see one of the knives. After the inspection, the girl asked Izo to look at his best product. The luxury model is several steps higher than the regular model. Izo wasn't going to show the luxury model because he decided to sell it to someone who was worthy of him. But the girl saw the knife and was convinced that there was something better. Izo gave her his best work, and she looked at him for a long time. She had big hands for her size. After taking a closer look at the sword, the girl thanked Izo and said that she had a request. Kneeling down, she asked to be accepted as an apprentice. It was impossible to ignore the dwarf who was kneeling in the middle of the street. Izo wanted to talk to her first. He didn't want Samia to be in the middle of a crowd. Izo invited the girl to the tavern to talk. The dwarf girl introduced herself as Reich Moritz. The dwarves didn't have surnames, but took the name of the workshop instead. Her name was Reich from the Moritz workshop. After introducing herself to Rika, she asked Izo if he was from the north. He replied that due to circumstances, he had settled in the Black Forest and worked as a blacksmith there. After listening to Izo, Reich explained why she wanted to become an apprentice. Dwarves start training at a certain age. She and her brothers left the workshop to study. She visited many places in search of a teacher. They look for good workshops and join them as apprentices, then return to their home workshop to create new things using the techniques they've learned. After that, they return to the workshop where they studied. It is said that the workshop is honored to have a dwarf as an apprentice, and it's an advantage for a dwarf to grow up and get his skills back. When Reich arrived in this city a few days ago, she came across a knife that was wielded by one of the guards. Since Izo was not a blacksmith in the city, but in the free market, Reich decided to let her brothers go and wait for him to show up again. If Izo refuses, Rika will have to find another workshop on her own. After thinking about it, Izo agreed, but he had 4 conditions. First of all, Izo didn't like that Reich decided to sacrifice herself and asked him not to do it again. Secondly, they didn't have enough space in the house, so they would have to make extensions. Third, based on the previous one, Reich will help not only in blacksmithing. Fourth, Izo asked Reich to drop the formalities and call each other by their first names. Reich jumped up and said that she couldn't call her master that. Izo was embarrassed and agreed to be called master. When Reich picked up her things, they went to Izo's house. Izo asked how Rika's legs were. It seemed that she wasn't used to walking. But Reich was strong and was fine. Izo also thanked Samia for choosing the safest path. They sat down to eat and started discussing places. Reich thought that Samia and Izo were married, so she didn't want to disturb them. But after explaining everything, they agreed that Reich and Samia would sleep together. Izo said that he was the master of this workshop, and he would only use what was described to him in the room allocation until they could build more. After a night's rest, they weeded the ground to make room for an extension to the house and dug holes for posts. Samia went hunting, so it was just the 2 of them with Reich. She seems to be used to this kind of work, and her muscles are quite developed, so they moved in a good place. When Samia returned, she told me that she was able to kill a large deer. But Samia didn't understand what was wrong with Reich. She said that earlier, when she wanted to chop wood, she took an axe and cut the log like butter with a hot knife. She didn't understand why the axe was so sharp. Izo said that they would start working on blacksmithing tomorrow, but they would also be working on construction at the same time. Izo decided to make female forms before nightfall. They had to join forces to butcher the huge tree deer that Samia had killed the previous morning. After a short rest, they began their work. They pored over the women's clothing that Izo had prepared yesterday. Reich had a lot of experience, and her crayfish didn't stop working. She worked really hard. They decided to eat a little and make a knife. But Izo lived because of a privileged skill. He didn't know how to teach it. Izo told Rika that he had never taught anyone anything before. But Reich was prepared not to miss any of Izo's hand movements. Izo went to work. At first, he wanted to make a regular model of the knife for mass production. After making the knife, Izo gave it to Rika. She realized that Izo wasn't serious about the knife. And Izo said that this type of knife is for mass production and asked Reich to make this model for him. Reich got to work. After a while, she finished and gave the knife to Izo. After looking at the knife, Izo realized that Reich had done a good job, and the knife was no worse than his usual model. Izo told Rika that the knife was well made and could only get better. He decided to show her the best knife he could, so that Rika would pass a similar one later. The first time Izo saw a man forging iron, he understood. Thanks to the privilege, Izo knew how to handle iron. He knew when and where to strike. He could feel the temperature and hardness of the water. He could make the right shape without sacrificing quality. Of course, this is not the result of hard work. Reich and the other masters trained and learned on their own from the very beginning. Izo wondered if maybe he shouldn't teach. If privileges aren't taught, then at least Reich can just emulate. Izo made a knife and gave it to Rika. Took a look at the knife. Reich said it was amazing. It's amazing how a human could create something like this. Even a dwarf wouldn't do that. Izo decided to give this knife to Rika. Reich thanked Izo. Samia came into the room and said that she had finished processing the meat and skins. As they ate, Reich asked Izo if he used magic. Izo said it was just simple spells. Samia called it amazing and revealed that Izo has the surname Tanuya. Reich gave her name as Reich Tanuya, and Samia asked her why. Reich explained that since this is the name of the workshop, then she should also have such a surname since she is his student. But Izo didn't like the name in the name of the workshop, so he suggested a name, so it turned out that Reich became Reich Izo. Samia also wanted to call herself that, and since they were a family, she would become Samia Tanuya or Samia Izo. Izo was a guest in this world. He never thought that he would leave something behind. But now there was something else in his life. Izo wondered what his skill would bring to this world. Besides Samia, Reich joined the family as a student. Thanks to Reich's serious attitude to work, as well as Samia's willingness to help, Izo had more time to concentrate on his work. Production efficiency at the Izo workshop has also been improved. About once a week, they went to the market in the city to sell their products. Izo made knives, long swords, and spear points. They also differed in quality. First of all, it is a general model for everyday use, which is produced in large quantities. The price was also set at a reasonable level so that even a housewife could buy it, and it is popular for its sharpness. The middle-class model was for those who were used to handling the blade. It was several steps higher than the usual one. This is a reasonable price, and they could be sold more expensive if it was a wholesaler in some place preferred by merchants. And the last model that Izo didn't put on display, but he will decide to sell it to those who he thinks are good enough for it, top class. A blade that Izo created using the full potential of privilege. The quality was too high and dangerous to just sell it to anyone. Izo quickly bought up everything. It looks like the people who bought his products. They spread good information about it. When it was time to replenish the iron ore and coal reserves, Reich asked Izo if he had a supplier. The house and workshop that the goddess prepared for Izo had supplies of necessary food and materials for making, but after a while everything ended. Izo wanted to ask the merchant where he could restock. The merchant Izo needed was just heading in his direction. The merchant said that Izo's products are very popular, and he is even asked to stock up on more. If Izo had known that, he would have spent 10 nights in the workshop to make more products. The merchant told Izo that he wanted to open in this city, not just a shop, but a real store. The merchant wanted to offer to let Izo sell the cutlery and weapons that Izo makes. The merchant was well aware of the quality of the tools Izo made. After thinking about it, Izo said that if he has a wholesale supplier, then he agrees. The merchant who helped Izo was called Camillo. He was glad that Izo agreed, and they formally introduced themselves. When Camillo heard that Izo lived in the Black Forest, he was very surprised. With Izo's skills, he could live anywhere, but apparently there was nothing he could do. While they were talking, Izo asked the merchant if he knew someone who could help them with coal, iron ore, and other resources. The merchant knew such a person and was willing to buy everything for Izo himself. The store was scheduled to open in a week, according to Camillo. A week later, when Izo went there, he saw a large building. Once inside, they saw a large room that contained a large variety of different and new materials and goods. While they were looking around, Camillo came up to them and suggested that they talk upstairs. They went into the room and sat on the sofa, and Izo told them that he had brought some knives and swords. Camillo wanted to buy everything, and Izo's products were popular and quickly sold out. The shop was huge. It looked like Camillo was a famous merchant. He explained that they have a lot of products because they sell them to the general public, travelers, professionals, and so on. Camillo's store reminded Izo of the supermarkets from his previous life. Camillo suddenly asked Izo a serious question. What will he do when asked to make a custom sword? Thinking about it, Izo realized that he would like to know who he would make the sword for, but he couldn't start until he got the order. After listening to Izo, Camillo decided to suggest that he would learn the identity and skill of the sword. Izo agreed, and after some thought suggested in response that he also wants to test the skills of the client. If the person comes to his workshop, he will receive a reward from him. The only way to get to Izo is through the forest, which is infested with wolves. If he can make it this far, then he has some skills. He will tell Camillo where he is, and if the merchant thinks the customer is suitable, he will direct him to Izo's workshop. Izo turned around and asked the girls for their opinion on his ideas. They were not against it, and they decided on it. Izo also asked Camillo about the material he ordered from him. Camillo replied that he had already received Izo's materials, and they went to the warehouse. The warehouse was also huge. After finding the materials, Izo asked for the price. Camillo said a quarter of the wholesale price for which products were purchased. There were a lot of things, and a cart was needed. Izo didn't have anything like that, so Camillo offered him an old cart that he wanted to throw out. He could give it away for free. He wanted to help his clients. Izo wondered why Camillo was being so kind to him. He explained this by saying that in Izo, he saw a supplier that has a future. For Camillo, it was important to have a good supplier with quality products and reasonable prices. Izo was grateful to Camillo for everything. They took a cart full of materials and drove home. On the way home, Samia suddenly smelled a wolf. According to Samia, the forest wolves are very intelligent. It seems that they were more sociable and less like the wolves of the plains. Although Izo and Samia were strong, there were many dangers around, so you had to be careful. The big black bear that had attacked Samia was still somewhere in this forest. Even the tiger beastman himself would be in danger if he ran into it. After returning home, Izo and Reich started trying out new material. It was even better than the one Izo had used before. They placed the cast iron they bought in Camillo's shop in a magic furnace, which does not generate slag and waste from the firing process. This is effective because it can be reused without harming the furnace itself. Reich was impressed by things she wasn't used to. Odd is usually a fast-growing business that requires a variety of equipment and labor. But in this world, Izo was helped by a special regime. He felt sorry for the masters of this world, but he was grateful for the opportunity to work in the depths of the forest. A couple of days later, while Izo was working in the workshop, Samia came up to him and asked him to go with her. The roof was already ready. The extension had been left to Samia and Rika for the past few days, while Izo was busy with blacksmithing. Right with her experience and Samia did a great job. Now all they had to do was make the bed doors and all that. Izo wanted everyone in his house to have their own bed. Izo wanted to stay home this week. He realized that he hadn't had a proper rest since coming to this world. Izo put stability first in this life, but he always worked in moderation. Sales at Camillo's store were going well. Izo had some spare cash in his pocket, so he decided to take a break this week. Upriver, an hour's walk from their house. A leisurely life and a long vacation. Izo wanted to spend this time doing what he always wanted to do. Izo brought the thread from home, made a fishing hook out of a nail, and instantly built a fishing rod. Izo took the bait, in the form of beetles and maggots, under a rock. Samia and Reich were not afraid of bugs, so they calmly picked up rocks and also looked for bait for fish. Izo put the bait on the hook, threw the rod into the water, and waited. He told Samia and Rika to be quiet so as not to scare the fish away. A forest with a dense crown of trees, beautiful birdsong, glitter, and the sound of gurgling water. A light breeze that made the leaves on the trees rustle. Izo was enjoying his vacation and this beautiful day, compared to those days of hard work at the company. Izo started eating better and sleeping more. But he still felt like a workaholic for working too hard. He couldn't remember the last time he was so relaxed. Samia's float twitched, as if the fish had taken a bite. She was surprised and stiffened. Izo told her to wait a second to give Byra some food. After a few seconds, Samia pulled on the fishing rod and pulled out the fish. She was very happy. Reich told Samia to lower the fish to the ground so that she could help her pull out the hook. As Izo watched, he noticed that since they were working together more, he was talking to Samia more openly than before. After a while, they decided to have a snack. When they sat down, Izo looked exhausted. According to the results of fishing, Samia caught 1 fish, Reich caught 2 fish, and Izo caught none. During the entire fishing trip, he caught a couple of leaves and about 3 branches. Samia said that it might be because of his great bloodlust. She said that fish, like animals, could sense danger in front of a predator, and Izo had a scary face. They still had a day, and there was no time to rush. Reich and Samia lay down on the bedspread and rested. Looking at them, Izo thought that it was just a rest, and there was no need to chase the result. It was good to just relax sometimes. They hadn't bitten since noon. Samya noticed that unlike hunting, she couldn't just track down and shoot the fish, so she had to wait. Izo decided to ask Samya about the organs she saved after carving the carcass. Why it does not leave the heart along with all the organs. Samya said that she buries her heart in the forest soil. This way, when she dies, the forest will give her a new life. The heart symbolized the soul. What they didn't bury, the wolves and the others ate. Some of them know about it and are waiting nearby. The beasts in this forest had their own custom. Someday the time of Izo's death on this land would come. He came here from another world and wonders if his soul can become a part of this forest. Izo changed places, but the fish was still missing. The sun was sinking, so it looked like it was time for Izo to give up. But come to think of it, 2 of them caught 3 fish, which is 1 fish per person. But so far, only Izo has been unlucky, even if it's for fun. Izo wanted to get closer to nature, like a monk, to catch fish, but that only increased his bloodlust. He wanted to get at least 1 fish, at any cost. After a while, Izo calmed down and suddenly his float began to move. Izo calmed down and slowly walked away. Pulling out his fishing rod, he caught a fish. Fishing was not very productive, but they had a lot of fun and calm. The first rest after a long time was successful. They packed up and went home. Starting tomorrow, Izo will continue to work and build the house. When they got home, they started eating. They discussed the annex and much more. They put windows and doors in every room. They put beds and shelves for bedding in the bedrooms. New rooms, Samya and Reich's bedrooms. Izo went back to his bedroom, and the study was converted into a guest room. Everyone could walk their own tightropes today. Reich was nervous as it would be her first time sleeping alone, and Samya couldn't wait for them to sow the field. Izo wanted to buy seeds from Camillo. In addition to building a house, they started clearing land nearby on weekends. They got meat and nuts in the forest, but they had to buy vegetables in the city. Izo would like to grow his own vegetables and be as independent as possible. The sickle and hoe that were unusable, Izo turned out to be very useful. Reich had never farmed before, but she noticed how much Izo knew. Izo combined knowledge from the past world and those obtained during rebirth. It was inevitable for him to be strange. There were many things Izo didn't know in the past world. They went to bed that night. It had been a long time since the Izos had slept in a bed. He had been sleeping at his desk ever since he came to this world. He even has his slavish office plankton skill that he hates sleeping at the desk. Although Izo was younger, he was in his late 20s, but inside he was still the same 40-year-old man. After a while Izo and the girls were working in the workshop, Samya sensed that someone had arrived. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door, and a loud female voice said that she came from Camillo. She wanted Izo to make her a sword. Samya was on guard. Izo got up and went to open the door. A girl with a raincoat and a scar on her face introduced herself as Helen. She wanted Izo to make her a custom weapon, and she came here on a tip from Camillo. After letting Helen in, Izo asked her for directions, one of the conditions being to get to his workshop alone through the woods. Helen said that she was not attacked by any wolves. It seems that she was so strong that the wolves kept a safe distance from her. The only difficulty Helen had was being able to find this place, but she saw the smoke coming out of the chimney and went to it. Izo asked what weapons Helen needed. She took off her cloak and took out the sword she was carrying. She was a mercenary, and Helen said she was used to her old swords, but she needed something stronger. On the battlefield, it wasn't always possible to take care of your swords either. But her life depended on whether or not Helen could use them. After carefully examining Helen's swords, he noticed that they were all scratched from constant use. Izo created weapons for battle. If someone picks up a sword they made, their opponent will be defeated, all depending on their strength. Someone will get hurt by the thing Izo creates. That thought never left him. But it was and always would be. Izo wanted to never turn a blind eye to it. He wasn't ready to accept it. He will never get used to it and will not become insensitive. Helen had good swords. Whoever made them has good skills. After asking Helen's permission, Izo gave Rika a look at the swords. Reich looked and said that the swords were good, and Helen did the right thing by turning to Izo. He could make even better swords than these. Izo wanted to know how his weapon would behave in practice. For example, when Helen performs a stroke. After some thought, Helen said that it would be difficult to explain it in words, so she would rather show it in practice. They went outside and Helen prepared to show off her punches. It cut through the air quickly. After watching Helen, Izo realized that she was using one sword to balance and the other sword to strike. She stopped and looked at the swords and said that there was something wrong without an opponent. Helen asked Izo to fight her. He was very surprised, but Samiya volunteered instead. She was more experienced in fighting than Izo. But Izo seemed stronger. Izo didn't have any combat experience in this world yet. But this body knew how to fight. It was tripled so that it knew it. Izo agreed to fight Helen. This fight was just to show him her fighting style, so Izo didn't think she would give it her all. Taking the sword, Izo asked Helen to go easy on him, but she thought that Izo was joking and rushed into battle. Helen closed her blades and advanced on Izo. Blow after blow, Helen struck them very fast like lightning. Izo kept up with her, but if he was distracted for even 1 second, Helen would tear him apart in no time. Being on the move all the time was very hard for Izo. It was obvious that Helen really wasn't joking. After a while, they finished the fight after catching their breath. Helen noticed that Izo was quite strong. In fact, Helen had planned to take 2 or 3 punches and end there. It was nicknamed the Lightning Sword, as only a few could keep up with it. So she got a little carried away. But thanks to the fight, Izo understood Helen's fighting style better. After thinking about it, Izo said that he could finish the job in about 2 days, so he asked Helen to come back in 3 days. But Helen had other plans. She planned to continue their fight after the break. Izo said that then he wouldn't be able to forge a weapon for her. After thinking about it, Helen said that Tagja wanted him to show her how he made weapons. She wanted to stay in Izo's house while the weapons were being made. It's a good thing they've set up a guest room in the house. Samiya and Reik were not against it, and Izo allowed Helen to stay with them for a while. Helen was happy and slapped Izo on the back and went to Samiya and Rika. Thus, their Izo workshop received its first customer. After meeting with Helen, Izo decided that he needed to finish the rest of the day's work quickly and start ordering her. When Samiya cleaned the burr-free swords, she gave them to Ace. After that, Samiya wanted to get out and trim the arrowheads. After looking at the swords, Izo said that she was getting better and better at it. On days when there was no hunting, Samiya would help Izo in the workshop. Her job was mostly casting and deburring, and she seemed to enjoy it. Maybe someday Izo would let her work with a hammer. All the while, Helen watched them work. When it was time for dinner, Helen sat down to eat with them. They talked about different things over dinner. Helen said that she was surprised to see a large deer on the way to Izo's house. She also said that she saw a bear in the distance. It seems that it was the same bear that injured Samiya. The bear was still close. Looking at Izo and Samiya, Helen asked what was wrong. Then Izo told me that Samiya was attacked by a bear and that she almost lost her life because of him. Helen said she could beat him if the weapon was in perfect condition. But Izo refused her help. He said that she should not do anything rash. Even for the beastman Samiya, who lives in this forest, he was dangerous. They're not likely to find her if something happens to her. Helen smiled and agreed. The next day, Izo and Reik decided to start ordering Helen. It was the first piece made to order in Izo's workshop. He wanted to put his whole heart and soul into it. Helen wanted to go scouting tomorrow, and today she took Samiya for a walk in the woods and is teaching her how to hunt. Imagining how Helen handled the blades yesterday, Izo heated the iron and used the hammer to run evenly over the entire surface, leveling it out. He carefully made sure that the material had optimal strength. With Izo's God-given eyes, he could see something like grain in the structure of iron. Then he beat it to shape it to ensure uniformity and accuracy. When he was done, Izo wanted to test his strength once. He asked Reik to bring him a general-purpose short sword. When Reik brought him the general model, he stuck the sword in the trunk and hit it with the sword. There wasn't a scratch on the sword. The durability was fine. The normal model that Izo had used to strike the sword was battered and couldn't be sold anymore. Reik asked if resharpening it wasn't enough to restore it to its original shape. Izo said that if you do this, the quality of the weapon will suffer. He didn't want to sell something that was used for something like this. So Izo thought it would be better to reprocess it and use it at home. Izo was very stubborn and honest. Even though Izo was given incredible strength, he worked with all the care and attention he could muster. He was glad that he was a little closer to what he had wanted to do in the past. After a while of hard work, the first sword was ready. After carving his own mark on the sword, Izo let Rika look at it. She carefully examined the sword. Reik didn't miss a single element. Reich said that it wasn't something that could be achieved through talent alone. She apologized for hurting Izo's past, but she felt that his departure, for whatever reason, was a huge loss to the North. She was right, a job of this level wasn't just a talent. Sometimes Izo used this power to its fullest extent for a specific purpose. This time, Izo made the steel stronger so it won't be able to cut the stone in half. But if the priority was sharpness, then it would probably be possible. This is no ordinary power for weapons. Izo wondered if he could make a sword that wasn't just made of ordinary steel. Strong and sharp, it could create a weapon that combined both, but what does can mean? If Izo isn't careful, it can affect the fate of the owner. But the threat from such weapons will be much greater than the benefit. If the product created by Izo turns out to be in the wrong hands. He was suddenly distracted from these thoughts by Reich, who thought that she had upset him in some way. After patting her on the head, Izo said that everything was fine, and he was just thinking. Don't get upset about something that didn't happen. This was something Izo should have thought about when he received the order. At the very least, he was glad that Reich could be his disciple. If he can create something that people think is worthwhile, then so far so good. While Izo and Reich were cleaning up, Samia and Helen returned home, bringing a lot of things. Helen said that there were a lot of herbs to treat suppuration. Some sour, some sweet. Samia also said that today the wolves made some strange sounds. She was sure that Helen had seen a large black bear at the time. Izo didn't want to endanger Samia and Reich. He also had to be careful. The next day, Reich and Izo continued their work. It was the second day of working on the order, and this time, Helen would be overseeing their work. After watching, Helen said it looked simple. Reich said that this was due to the fact that the master had an incredible speed. Reich couldn't do that yet, and she didn't know if she would ever catch up to his incredible speed, even if she practiced all her life. Izo was pleased to hear those words. In his case, it's a gift from the goddess, and he was a little hurt by the praise. After a short time, both swords were ready. Helen wanted to try them out right away, but Izo said it was too late for that today, so he suggested we wait until tomorrow. Helen agreed to wait, but she couldn't wait any longer. In the evening, Izo prepared dinner. He had completed his first custom job today, so they were celebrating today. After eating, they went to bed. The next morning, Helen wanted to try out the weapon. It fit perfectly in her hand. She was so excited that she couldn't sleep last night. After testing it out, she quickly cut through the air. The blades were beautiful. Placing them on the ground, Helen ran towards Ace. She was glad that she had asked Izo to do this and hugged him tightly. After separating them, Izo said that he had tested the strength, but if something happened, he would fix it. Helen just had to go to Camillo or Izo's workshop. Helen agreed and asked for the bill of payment. Izo said that she can pay as much as she sees fit. Helen didn't know anything about market prices. Izo was happy with whatever amount she was willing to pay for a special order. After thinking about it, Helen gave me 2 gold and 1 silver coins. She asked if it was really a normal price. She paid a little more than her previous swords. Izo said that the original swords were also good, and he didn't mind it at all. After saying that, they shook hands and Helen left. She had a damn good grip. Samia and Reich used all their strength to rescue Izo from her embrace. Everything was going back to normal. And 2 days later it happened, encountering a natural threat. A few days later, while Izo and Reich were working in the workshop, Samia quickly returned home. Izo asked what had happened. After catching her breath, Samia said that a black bear had appeared there. She was fine as she ran away as soon as she saw him. She was sure she had escaped, but he had a good nose. He could have followed her. It looks like the bear got pretty close, or if it didn't, they might have run into it on their way to the city. Izo didn't like the idea of Samia or Reich being attacked. After a bit of thought, he decided that he would eliminate it if it was there. He told them to lock the doors in the workshop and dem until he returned. Samia wanted to go with him, but Izo was against it. He wasn't sure if he could protect her if anything happened. It wasn't that Izo underestimated Samia's archer skills, but he thought they should let him handle it on his own. After the fight with Helen, Izo realized that his body moved on its own, and although he avoided fighting the bear, he decided that he was capable of doing so. Samia didn't want to stay, but she accepted it and told him to come back. Izo wasn't going to leave his family to die, so he would definitely go back home. When he went outside, Reich and Samia locked the door and prayed for Izo to come back. It started to rain outside. Izo walked through the forest in search of a large black bear. He went where he sensed danger. Normally, he would leave the search for danger to Samiya, but if it was a danger of the level of a huge black bear, even his cheat sense would start ringing. The smell and sound were lost in the rain. In a way, the rain was his chance to win. It will be harder for the bear to find Izo there. In the last world, he gave his life to save the cat. Now he was trying to kill the bear. His body had changed, but the soul that had given up its life for the cat was still the same. However, he had something to protect right now. In his previous life, Izo was lonely and worked hard for a black company, having nothing. But now he had family and acquaintances who appreciated what he created. Izo pulled himself together. After walking a little further, he found a bear. The black bear was huge. It looked like it could break your entire bone with just one punch. Izo prepared to attack, and the bear charged in. Even with its size, the bear was fast. If he touched Izo even a little, he would kill him immediately. They struck blow after blow. Izo's punches didn't have much effect. Suddenly, the bear hit Izo, sending him flying into a tree trunk. Izo couldn't die. It was a new life, a new world in which he was waiting at home. To protect the everyday life he'd worked so hard to build here, Izo wanted to live in this world. With a decisive blow to the bear, Izo won. The bear fell to the ground and did not move. There was no breath either. Izo was tired and collapsed on the ground. For the first time in his life, Izo took someone's life, and he was so nervous that he was shaking all over. Even with Izo's priority mode, it was difficult. He had a lot of bruises and bruises, but his bones looked fine. Now all that remained was to figure out what to do with the bear. Izo decided to eat it and bury it. He wasn't sure if he could do it, but he had to carry it. Even with the strength and muscles, it was hard to carry the bear. The rain was still falling, but it was beginning to subside. Izo hoped that he would get home before the wolves or anything else attacked him. He was almost halfway there. Suddenly, someone grabbed Izo's arm and pulled him away. It was Samiya who was holding Izo and snarling at the bear. Izo calmed her down by telling her that the bear was dead. She calmed down and tears came out of her eyes. She was very worried about Izo and was glad that he was okay. Reik came up to them and told them what had happened. It turned out that Samiya sensed that Izo was being delayed, after which she rushed to meet him. Reik couldn't stop her and went with her. Although it was dangerous, Reik couldn't let her go alone. Reik also revealed that Samiya said that the smell of Izo and the black bear mixed, and they set up an ambush, thinking that the worst had happened. After that, they saw that Izo and the bear looked like one, and they were overcome with panic. He thanked Samiya and Reik. Izo managed to coax Samiya to calm down, and together they carried the bear. On the way, they lowered the bear into the lake and decided to return for it tomorrow. Izo was fainting when they got home. Reik volunteered to cook dinner, and Izo decided to rest in his room. He took off his clothes to go wash up, but suddenly he started to feel sleepy. He was at his limit and his eyes closed, and he fell on top of Samiya. He opened his eyes the next morning. Samiya was sitting next to him. She said that they wiped it because if you don't do it, then bad air will get into the body. So they did it together with Reik and put him on the bed. Reik came into the room with her things. Izo got up to change, while Samiya and Reik went to prepare breakfast. A new day was beginning, a very ordinary day. After breakfast, they went to the river where the bear was lying. They took it out of the river, butchered it, and roasted it over a bonfire. Suddenly, Izo realized that they didn't have a bathroom in the house. Samiya and Reik were boiling water and drying themselves while washing their hair in a bucket. And Izo jumped into the lake during the daily water intake. It was very refreshing. He hadn't heard any complaints from Reik and Samiya, but he was a little worried. Later, Samiya returned home from hunting. It was covered in mud. Samiya said that the place where she killed the beast she brought was dirty because of the rain, so it got a little dirty. There was no way to clean up all the dirt with a rag, so Izo suggested that she go for a swim in the lake. Samiya didn't want to go, so Reik offered to go with her. Reik hadn't gone outside for a long time, as it was dangerous to go alone. She took Samiya's hand and pulled her towards the lake. It seems that Samiya didn't like water. She often went into the water to submerge her catch, but did not dive headfirst. She wasn't used to washing. But even so, her hair and fur were always beautiful, as she carefully cared for them and wiped her body. So little maintenance, and yet she looked so immaculate. But Reik was always neat too. He was hot and sweaty in the workshop, so she decided to take a dip from time to time. She couldn't reach the lake by herself, so she went with Samia today. Samia said that if Reich wanted to come here again, she should let her know and take her there. Reich thanked her and offered to wash her hair. She looked after her younger brothers, so she had experience. Reich walked over to Samia and wet her hair, then began to gently clean the dirt out of it. Samia didn't remember much about her childhood, but it reminded her of an old feeling she had when she was a child. After they washed up, they returned home. Izo dried their hair with wind magic. While preparing dinner, Izo noticed that Samia was doing something with a spoon, and he asked her what she was doing. She said that Izo and Reich didn't hold the spoon like her, they held it beautifully. She was just as hungry as her family. Reich said that she would practice with Samia. After explaining how to hold it properly, Reich showed all the Samii in practice. She had a big family, so she taught very well. She could teach Izo and Samia a lot. When the food was ready, Samia tried to eat by holding her spoon properly. Today's food was more delicious than usual. It's true that food tastes better when you're happy. Gradually, they became a real family. In the mansion, the siblings were discussing where she could hide. The man told the girls to go to the Black Forest where the blacksmith lives. The man wrote a letter to a merchant who knew of the blacksmith's whereabouts, so he gave the letter to his sister and sent her on her way wishing her luck. In the town store, Camillo, the merchant, and Izo were discussing a trade plan. Suddenly Izo asked about the young guard Marius. He had heard that Marius had long since returned to the capital, and Izo asked if Camillo knew anything about it. Izo wanted to thank Marius for helping him with Izo's endeavors, but he hadn't seen him lately, so he wondered what had happened. Camillo had heard that something was amiss in the capital right now. He thought it had something to do with Marius. It was better not to know too much about such things for my own good. After talking to Camillo, Izo returned home with Reich and Samia. In the distance, a girl who was being chased by her pursuers was running. They might catch her before she gets to town. Suddenly, Samia heard the chase and ran to check. Izo asked her if someone was attacked by bandits or wolves, then let her help them. Izo asked Reich to help him with the cart, and they ran after Samia. When they got there, they saw Samia and a girl fighting with bandits. Izo took the sword in his hands and also rushed into battle. Izo's weapons were sharper than the bandits, and they quickly dealt with the bandits. Those who tried to escape, Samia shot with a bow. They killed them all. The girl was sitting on the ground. Izo turned to her and asked. He wanted to know who she was and why she was attacked. Obviously, she had her reasons, but they needed to explain themselves to the guards, so they should know why they killed so many people. Her face looked familiar to Izo. She thanked him for his help and introduced herself. Her name was Diana Amor. She lives in the capital. For some reason now, she had to move to a certain person for a while. But before she could reach her destination, she was attacked by pursuers. She does not know what would have happened if Izo and the girls had not appeared. Diana had a surname, and it looked like she belonged to the capital's aristocracy or was connected to the events Camillo had mentioned. Sooner or later, the guards would have come to this place. They might just run away, or they might inform them of what happened. Diana wanted to escape. She wanted to buy more time until she reached her destination. Now Diana wanted to go to that man. They were in the same boat now. They wanted to go into the woods, so Rika had to pull the cart. Izo asked for Samia's help to get through the safe route. After hiding the bodies, they set off. This was the first time Izo had used his weapon to kill people. He didn't know if it was the girl's fault or those people's, but Izo was determined to protect his family. So he didn't feel guilty or sorry for what he had done. Izo lingered for a while, he prayed for the dead, and they set off. Izo asked Diana to tell him about the man she was looking for. Perhaps he could help her find it. Diana said that her brother said that person lives in a remote forest. It looks like he just moved in here. Diana said that he was also a skilled blacksmith. Diana's brother also said that his sword and knife were made by him, and that her brother would like to fix them when the problems are sorted out. After thinking about it, Izo realized that it was no wonder she looked so familiar. Izo decided to ask Diana about his brother. Was his name Marius, and had he ever been a guard in the town down the road? She said that her brother's name was Marius Alhart-Aimer, and she asked how he knew him. Adding up everything he had learned, Izo realized that the person Diana was looking for was himself. He turned to Diana and said that it looked like he was the man she was looking for. She was very surprised. It wasn't something that could be easily believed. After explaining everything, they went home. Diana had a letter from Marius to Camillo. She was supposed to meet the only person who knew where Izo lived and ask him to bring it to him. Marius wants to give his sister to an eccentric old man who lives in the Black Forest, a dangerous and inhospitable place. It was obvious that Diana was having trouble walking because she wasn't used to it. Izo thought that something must be wrong with Marius if he decided to do this. Diana asked them to introduce themselves. They had bought some time. If they stayed here, the guards would soon catch up to them. So Izo suggested that Diana stay with them. She happily accepted his offer and thanked him. They arrived home and unpacked their luggage first. Thanks to Samia's vigilance, they didn't have to worry about being chased. Izo showed her the living room, which was probably too small for an aristocrat, but Diana took it quite calmly. After they sorted out their things, they started preparing dinner. They called Diana and sat down to eat. Izo hoped that Diana would enjoy their meal. After trying it, Diana said that the food was very tasty. Everyone was surprised by her reaction. She explained that she was very hungry, she hadn't eaten anything since morning. But everyone was happy that she liked the food. It was important to be able to enjoy good food. With delicious food, you could survive the most difficult times. She was grateful that they had accepted her, even though it was unexpected. Her life was in danger, and now she had to spend the night in someone else's house. But if she can enjoy the food, then it's fine. It's time to find out the reason why she left her city. Izo wasn't sure if he should ask her for details, but if Diana was going to stay with them indefinitely, he would like her to share some information with them so that they can hide it properly. Diana wanted to tell them about the Amor family first. Count Ima ruled the entire territory, including Camillo. Leon was the eldest heir. Carol was the second brother, and the family had only 4 children, including Marius and Diana. The inheritance was supposed to go to his older brother, Leon. But about a month ago, the situation changed dramatically. The Count and his heir set out to whitewash a horde of demons that has appeared on the border. They were dying on the battlefield. Part of the army was also destroyed. Marius returns to the capital after bad news. During the investigation of the case, a suspicious moment was discovered. It was said that they were attacked by a powerful monster. But there was no sign of the monster, and the frames looked more like cuts. If the incident was staged, then suspicion would fall on the second brother, Carol. In fact, Carol was the son of a concubine, and the inheritance of the family throne belongs to Marius, the son of the real wife. According to Diana, Carol's mother died shortly after his birth, and Marius' mother took pity on him. Therefore, he was brought up on a par with other brothers and sisters. If the issue of succession is not resolved in the near future, the absence of the Count may lead to the deprivation of the title. The one who was targeting Diana was her own brother. When Izo saw Marius' letter, he was convinced that Diana should stay with them for a while. Izo didn't want to be too formal, so he suggested that Diana talk more freely. Diana agreed and did as Izo asked. The next day, a slightly different routine began. After the water treatment, they went to work, Diana also helping them. She was quite strong, even though she was a noble. After a while, they finished their work. During this time, they made many swords of different quality. Diana wanted to see one of the swords they had made. After looking at the sword carefully, she said that the sword was incredible. There were only a few blacksmiths in the capital who could do such a job. Diana asked Izo to train with her, which surprised him a lot. She didn't think she would beat him, but she wanted to see his skills one more time. They went outside and took up a fighting stance. Izo told Diana to start as soon as she was ready. They started the fight, Diana's every move looking elegant. She was agile and precise. It wasn't as good as Helen's, but it was much better than a normal swordsman's. Suddenly Izo became serious and made a feint. After that, the fight stopped and Izo won. Even though Izo didn't fight at full strength, Diana still couldn't win. But she was pretty good at it. It was called the Arena Rose. In a battle with Izo, even a beastman would be hard to beat. Reich said that Izo once fought with Helen. This surprised Diana very much. Helen, Lightning Sword. This is the name she was given for her speed with the sword. This is what made her famous, and she is well known among the nobility. Izo suggested that they go back to the house once they were done fighting. Diana put down her sword and knelt down in front of Izo. She asked him to teach her. Izo thought for a while and agreed if it suited her to study once after work. Diana was very happy. Looking at her, Izo thought that she must have been a tomboy. Marius must have had a hard time. On this day, Izo had a second apprentice, though not a blacksmith. One more thing was added to his daily routine. Diana continued to help them with their work in the workshop from the next day. In the evenings, they fought with wooden swords that they had made for training. Diana was well trained in the art of sword fighting, and she is sharp. Izo thinks that the best thing he could do for Diana was to help her improve herself through this kind of competition. Like teaching Reich blacksmithing, it's a way to use him, since he couldn't teach anything by himself. This way they can build on their own foundation and move forward. He is sure that he can be useful to them. Diana ran quickly through the trees, rolling down the mountain. Samia, who was standing on top of a tree branch, fired her bow. After a while, Samia and Diana returned home. Izo wanted to greet them, but he wondered why Diana looked so disheveled and tired. Samia explained that she had asked Diana to be a beater. She had to track down the prey and drive it to the archer. Diana said that it was different from hunting in the capital, but thanks to Diana, Samia was able to kill a large deer. Since Diana had to run so much, Izo canceled today's training session. It was the best thing to do in Diana's tired state. Izo suggested that Diana deal with the deer the two of them had killed tomorrow. Diana was looking forward to it. The next day they went to work. Samia showed Diana how to butcher a deer. Previously, Diana did not know how to do this and only saw the finished meat. But now she knew a little more. She was unperturbed, even though she was a young lady. The deer that was alive yesterday became the meat that they eat, which fell on their table. That was life. Samia said that Izo looked like her grandfather in those words. Apparently, it was a northern way of thinking. Samia was taught at home that everything has a soul. It was like the beastmen. And the grass in the forest, the water, the wind, the earth, the sun, the fire that they used, everything has a soul. Izo said that in order to live with nature, you need to be grateful, so his grandfather said. So when Izo ate, he would put his hands together in gratitude for living in the bounty of nature and say, "Itadakimasu." It was like a prayer. Now, Samia understood why Izo did this from time to time. She suggested that we do the same thing from now on, just like at Izo's house, and everyone liked the idea. After making an agreement, they went home to prepare dinner. They cut up the deer meat and stewed it with vegetables over a bonfire. When they were all seated, Izo told them to put their hands together, and they said, "Itadakimasu." At the Eimer family home, Marius was sitting in a chair in front of the fireplace, thinking. Something was bothering him a lot. Marius thought that after the funeral of his father and older brother, Carol would become the head of the family. When they found out that Carol could not become the head, then his face changed, he was angry. That was the first time Marius had seen him like this. Soon after Carol left the house, he spoke out against the succession to the throne. Then terrible things began to happen around Marius. Someone planted false documents that could undermine the reputation of his family. There were constant assassination attempts. Marius didn't find it too inconvenient. He could easily prove his innocence, and he could also stand up for himself. But now that he dragged Diana into it, he couldn't let him go on like this, especially after the recent incident. To end this conflict, Marius will have to rely on him. But who knows if he will be able to cope with this task. In the woods not far from the road, Izo was climbing through the bushes, looking for something. Peeking under one of the bushes on the branch, he saw a small paper bundle tied up. It was just what he needed. Several days had passed since Diana had arrived at Izo's house. Izo went to the city to sell his goods, and he also gave the letter to Camillo and explained the whole situation to him. Then they decided what to do next. As it turned out, he already knew what was happening. He hoped that he wouldn't have to involve them in all this. But since Izo was entrusted with Diana, he was already involved in this situation. Izo wanted to repay the debt to Marius, so if he needed a good blacksmith, then he was willing to do whatever it took to help him. Since they found a secluded spot in the forest, not far from the road, they decided to exchange letters there. So Izo contacted Marius a few days later. The letter Izo found told him to prepare everything they needed for work, and they were supposed to go to the capital tomorrow. When Izo got home, he quickly explained everything to the girls. The three of them were supposed to stay at home. Reich asked what they should do with the blacksmith shop. Izo told them to continue working. Reich knew how to light a fire in the forge, and using the bellows from the warehouse, she could do it. They had a lot of food and provisions prepared, so they wouldn't starve to death. If necessary, Samia could go hunting in the forest. Izo had a family to rely on. Diana felt guilty for dragging them into this. But she didn't have to worry about it. Izo owed Marius a favor, so it could be said that he was just paying him back. This calmed Diana down a little. With all the issues resolved, Izo wanted to do a little work that day so that there would be less to do the next day. The next day, Izo crouched in the trees by the roadside and waited. When Camillo and the cart passed by on the road, Izo got out. Running closer, he listened to Camillo. Izo had to get inside the box to avoid being seen, but it seemed too small for a grown man. When he removed the lid, he saw that the box inside was larger than the outside. The box was built into the cart, and because of this, there was more space inside. It was an old tradesman's trick, Camillo said. Even so, it was still a little cramped inside. Along the way, Izo fell asleep. It looked like they were almost there while he was sleeping, and it was a bit noisy outside. They were at the checkpoint. The guard inspected the goods and Camillo drove on. They were already far away from the checkpoint. Izo's whole body went numb. When Camillo told him to get out, he was happy to finally get some exercise. Looking around, Izo saw what looked like a blacksmith shop. Marius explained that it was the private blacksmith shop of the Amor family. Just looking at him, you wouldn't say that he worked as a soldier from the gate, a real aristocrat. Marius said that it was in this smithy that they repaired the soldiers' weapons. They hadn't seen each other for a long time and were happy to see them again. They didn't have much time, so Marius was brief. Marius wanted Izo to make him a sword. This sword had to be the best one he could forge. Izo wondered what he needed the sword for. Marius explained that the Eimer family had a sword that was a family heirloom. But a few days ago, someone stole this sword. Diana told Iso about what was going on in her family. Marius explained that if you take into account everything that was happening, then it was possible to assume that the sword was stolen by none other than his brother Carol. But Izo didn't understand why they needed him. Marius said that most likely Carol would try to claim that the one who failed to protect and allowed the family heirloom to be stolen was not worthy to be the head of the family. He thought that Carol would pretend to gather information and search for the sword, and when the time came, say that he had found it. So he could prove that he was worthy of becoming the heir. He had a plan so obvious that it was already revealed. So Marius needed Izo. He didn't have time to look for a new sword. So Marius wanted Izo to pretend that the stolen sword was actually a fake. Izo needed to forge a new Amor family sword. Although the sword was called a relic, it wasn't forged by elves or gods, it was just an ordinary steel sword. When the Eimer family was recognized by the king himself, he granted it to them. It was said that this sword was forged by the best blacksmith of the time. Camillo said that Helen showed him a sword that was forged by Izo. He didn't think there were any other blacksmiths in their world that could forge something like this. Camillo was confident that Izo could handle it, but Izo had never seen their family sword. If he took up forging, it would be completely different from the original. Marius told Izo not to worry about it. They rarely used it, only in various private ceremonies. In the archives too, there was only its history, and not a single word about the appearance of the sword, so there shouldn't have been any problems. After listening to him, Izo decided to take the order. Marius was grateful for that. But Izo asked Marius to speak more informally. Marius couldn't disrespect someone who was saving his family, so he offered, so that both of them wouldn't be overly polite to each other. Izo agreed. Marius decided to return to the subject of the sword. He said Carol might try to uncover their secrets, but that was all they had to do. So this is to compare the final and original sword. If Izo's sword is stronger, it will immediately become clear which sword was bestowed by the king and which was not. But they didn't have much time, so they had to start right now. Once settled in the blacksmith shop, Izo put on his uniform and got ready to go to work to pay back the debt to Marius. The blacksmith shop of House Eimer didn't use magic, so Izo had to light the fire himself. But he was lucky that thanks to the knowledge he got from his ability, he knew the basics, so he could handle it without any problems. First, you had to choose the right piece of iron and forge it on an anvil. After a few dozen strikes, the iron will turn red hot and red. Then Izo had to put it in barked barley and set it on fire. Then put it on the coals in the furnace. The furs in the forge also had to be used manually. With their help, it was necessary to kindle a flame. But despite all the difficulties, Izo seemed to be doing quite well. He usually used his magic mecha and magic furnace. Therefore, he knew that his work at home was greatly facilitated by magic. Izo picked out the best piece of iron he had and started working. After putting the piece in the coals, he waited for the proper temperature and began to forge the sword. But while he was forging, he realized that something was wrong. Perhaps it was because Izo used a different hammer. It was a custom model, and Izo felt like he needed to concentrate better. After he increased his concentration, he managed to shape the sword. And now Izo has moved on to tempering. Finally, after that, he moved on to tempering and sharpened the sword. He was ready. But somehow, the sword was different from the others. At home in the workshop, everyone was waiting for Izo to return. Samia asked Izo to promise that he would return unharmed. But even so, she was still worried about him, Reich noticed, even though Samia had denied Reich's words. Diana thought it wasn't surprising that Samia was worried. She was still worried about dragging him into this. But Samia was even more worried about Diana. No one knew what might happen to her and her family in the future, even though family is something very complex and important for all living beings. At the same time, in the blacksmith shop, Izo racked his brain. Why were the swords he made constantly different? Although the environment in which he worked was different, Izo didn't plan on creating a unique sword. Camillo came to the smithy and brought Izo some food. Camillo asked Izo if he was finished, demonstrating the work of the sword. It looked as good as a high-end model. But when Izo demonstrated the sharpness of his usual knife, he noticed that the knife was much sharper. He didn't know what was wrong. Izo decided that the swords he had already forged would be given to Camillo at a discount. After making 2 more knives at the level of the custom model, he realized that the knives were also inferior to the high-end model. The reason why they were different, he couldn't understand. Taking a closer look, Izo saw that the knives he had made were shining brighter, as if they were glowing. When he didn't put his heart into it, the light wasn't so bright. How could Izo achieve the same light with the materials he had? He knew he couldn't do it. Then he tried using his own knife. After dividing his knife into parts, he wrapped the parts in a thin, damp linen cloth and covered it with straw ashes. Then melt on fire and after cooling, forge 1 ingot. If he didn't have the materials, then Izo could just use his knife. Putting everything together, he might have succeeded. Heat it, cut it, fold it back, hit it with a hammer, heat it again, and Izo repeated it about 15 times, and then the real work began. Using his power, Izo sharpened his senses to the limit. To strike accurately and knock out the shape of the sword. He no longer felt the same as when he was first hit. After a while, the sword was ready. To make a relic out of the sword, Izo used a chisel to draw a pattern. According to Marius, the original heirloom sword of their family was the badge of honor of the founders of the Aimer family. He was important to the history of this family. Izo didn't think Marius would want the sword called a fake. It wasn't just a sword, and Izo had no right to ruin it. So he made a new sword that wouldn't be any worse than the previous one. Izo had to be careful to avoid deformation and loss of strength, so that the status of their family heirloom is not undermined. By the time Izo finished his work, night had fallen. Izo completed the sword and completely decorated it. Izo did not forget to put his emblem of a sitting fat cat in a place where it would not be visible and wrapped it in leather. It was time to rest, and he wanted to finish the scabbard tomorrow. Marius took the sword in his hands and was greatly struck. This sword was beautiful. Izo said that it took him an entire evening to finish the scabbard, but he managed it. Marius took a stance. With a couple of punches, he sliced through the air with ease. Marius and Diana's fighting style was similar. Marius said it was just a beautiful sword. It was the best sword he had ever held in his hands. I couldn't bear to call this sword a fake. Marius was very grateful to Izo for this beautiful sword. He told Izo to rest today, and he would pick him up tomorrow morning. Izo thought that he would return home tomorrow, but he was very wrong. They haven't let him come back yet. He woke up in the morning and prepared to leave. But suddenly Mr. Marius came with his maids and told Izo to change into a formal suit, pretending to be a northern aristocrat. After that, Marius took Izo to the meeting with him. At the head of the table sat a stern man who had to make a decision. He said that he had heard that Lord Carroll had returned the stolen family sword. This stern man was the Marquis of Menzel, the owner of the mansion where the decision was to be made. He is said to have been a close friend of the previous Earl of Aimer. Marius and Diana's brother Carroll was also sitting at the table. He confirmed the Marquis' words and said that he intercepted him yesterday near the border. The Marquis was already prepared to settle the matter and let Marius inherit the title of Count. But Carroll spoke out against it. His argument was that the person who allowed the family heirloom to be stolen did not have the right to bear the title of Count. What Marius had been waiting for had begun. The Marquis thought this wise, but Marius hastened to persuade him otherwise. With the Marquis's permission, Marius began to speak. He said that the sword Carol found was a fake. Marius' statement surprised everyone. Taking out the sword that was forged by Izo, Marius called it a real sword. Carol was furious, but the Marquis quickly reassured him. With that done, Marquis Menzel asked Marius to continue explaining. After the Marquis's words, Marius took out a package from his pocket. As he explained from the documents left by Marius' father, it appeared that the Aimer family often used spare swords for ceremonial and many other purposes. Based on everything that was written in the document, a real sword is a completely different sword. Carol's face was a grimace of horror and incomprehension. The title will be inherited by the one who brings the real sword, said the document that Marius handed over to Marquis Menzel. After reading it, the Marquis recognized the handwriting of the Count of Aimer. But Iso realized that it was a carefully prepared fake. Looking at Camillo, he realized whose work it was. Marius said that his brother had already left when the document was found. Since Marius and Carol only met at this meeting, he couldn't tell him about the document. Marquis Menzel was about to report to His Majesty. But Carol couldn't believe that this sword was a fake. Even though he didn't have a chance, he tried to climb out of the hole he had dug for himself. After listening to Carol, Marius offered to conduct a test. With the Marquis's permission, they went out into the courtyard. Inserting 2 swords into the ground, one of the knights took a spear and struck at the sword as well. With a single strike, the spearhead was cut into 2 pieces. There wasn't a scratch on the sword. Now it was the second sword's turn. But Marius said it wasn't necessary. He took out his sword and cut the fake sword in half with a single blow. Everyone was in shock. The sharpness of the sword was incomparable. Marius said that they can no longer doubt he had a real sword in his hands. Such a sharp sword would surely inspire terror to opponents on the battlefield. Carol was desperate. The Marquis had made up his mind. Marius was to inherit the title, and he was about to inform His Majesty. Suddenly, Izo noticed something strange. Suddenly, Carol picked up a knife and ran towards Marius. But Marius reacted just in time. With his sword, he cut his brother's body in 2. He killed the deceiver and the thief. The Marquis called Marius Count, which meant that he recognized him. They finished their business in the garden and went back inside. Marius looked back and cast a sad glance in his brother's direction. Thus, Marius inherited the title of Count. Because of Carol's actions, his name was blackened. After all this, Marius discussed further actions with the Marquis of Menzel. It was decided not to make Carol's death and deeds public. It was necessary to take measures to ensure that no one had any suspicions about his absence. The Amor family will secretly take the corpse and bury it in the cemetery. When Izo arrived at the Amor Manor, he quickly changed into his usual clothes. After changing, he returned to Camillo and Marius. Marius thanked everyone for their help. He wanted to do something to thank Camillo and Izo for their help. Camillo said that it was enough for them to continue working together. And Izo would like information about rare ores like mithril. It didn't have to be in Izo's hands. It could be reported to Camillo and he would get it. Marius agreed with this arrangement. But he also gave Izo a bag of coins and told him to accept them without further questions. Izo accepted his gift. After a while, Izo and Camillo left the Amor estate. Izo returned to the Black Forest to bring Diana back to the celebration of the new Count of Aimer. Izo said goodbye to Camillo and went home. It was getting dark, and it was hard to see anything in the dense forest, so Izo lit a torch and walked on. After walking a little further, he finally saw his home. Izo, it felt like he'd been away for ages. He'd already missed her. As he got a little closer, he saw the door open. He was met by Samia, Reich, and Diana. The 3 of them were waiting for him to return. After greeting Izo, they went inside and sat down at a table. Diana had to hear the sad news about one of her brothers. Carol used to be kind to everyone. He often played with Diana when they were kids. He was on good terms with his father and her brother Rian, and of course Marius. Her eyes were streaming with tears, and her voice was shaking. She didn't understand how it could have ended like this. No one knew how to calm her down. Everyone just sat quietly by her side and looked at her with sad eyes. Izo couldn't help but think that he had forged a new sword for the Aimer family, and that the same sword had taken the life of Diana's brother. Diana apologized for crying. Izo told her to cry while she could. He said that Carol's death would be kept a closely guarded secret. If she needs to cry, she'd better cry now. Izo told Diana that he would take her to the manor tomorrow morning. Izo was supposed to be at the celebration too. They'll be gone for another 2 or 3 days. Rika and Samia will have to wait for them. The next day, Diana and Izo met up with Camillo. The three of them got on the carriage and went to the Amor Manor. When they arrived, Izo helped Diana down from the cart. They were met by Marius, and as soon as Diana saw her brother, she rushed to him. Since Izo wasn't sitting in a box this time, he got a good look at the city. There were many people of different races here. In addition to people with different skin tones, there were also beastmen and dwarves. But that was not all, as Camillo said. The gate at the entrance to the city is proof that the kings of the past made peace with the giants. But despite all the elves did not live in the city, it is said that they live independently and do not leave their village. Sometimes they went out to trade, but they rarely show up here. It was rather unexpected, but it turned out that tomorrow there would be an audience with the king and the celebration itself. Marius looked very tired. Once Izo was settled in his room, he had nothing else to do. Suddenly one of the servants knocked on his door and told him that Diana was waiting in the garden. When Izo came down and went out into the garden, he saw Diana standing with a sword in her hands. She wanted to challenge Izo again. They started the fight. After a while, they ran out of steam. After catching her breath, Diana asked Izo to fight her seriously at least once. He agreed, and Diana got ready. Before she could blink, the fight was over. With one forward thrust, Izo ended the fight, and Diana didn't even see the attack. He said that Diana is getting stronger day by day. If she continues to train, she will reach unexpected heights. She was glad of his praise. The next day, Marius told the king all about it. And after the celebration, he officially became the Count of Eimur. The hastily prepared celebrations were brilliant. Marius mingled with other aristocrats. But even so, Izo agreed. Camillo seemed to know something, but didn't show it. After loading their belongings into the cart, they set off. After a while, they reached the right place. Izo wanted to collect the luggage in a box. When he opened the box, he was surprised. Diana got out of the box. Izo was shocked. Diana handed Izo a letter from Marius. He wrote that if Izo was reading this letter, then their plan had worked. He wished he could have seen Izo's surprised face. Marius also wrote about the cargo. He became an earl and lost two of his older brothers. So the circumstances around Diana have also changed. Marius would like Izo to take her in, otherwise there would be bad things that might happen in the future. Marius also wrote that Izo can do whatever he wants with Diana if she doesn't mind. Izo pretended not to read the last few lines. Since Diana had already arrived, there was nothing to do. They walked home together, saying goodbye to Camillo. They were almost home, but Diana wanted to apologize. She thought that she would only get in the way of them. But Izo calmed her down. He said that if she really got in the way, he would send her back. With that, they walked back home. But Izo asked Diana not to call him Master anymore. He wanted to be addressed simply as Izo. She agreed. They arrived at the house, where they were met by Samia and Reich. They were glad to be back. When Reich said that everything went like clockwork, Izo got suspicious. It seems that the three of them knew everything from the beginning, but no one told Izo anything. Izo's blacksmith shop welcomed Diana into their family, and their every day was full of smiles. The family grew up, which means that it was necessary to expand the house. They spent almost a week expanding their home. All four of them worked hard and finally finished the job. Diana enjoyed building with everyone else. Today, she was supposed to try out a new room. Izo also wanted to give Diana the knife he made. Every member of their family had one. We can say that this is their family heirloom. The knife was very sharp, so Izo warned Diana. They moved Diana's things to her room, and their work was done for the day. Tomorrow, they wanted to buy bed linen in the city, and tonight to have dinner and go to bed. Each of them slept in their own room. The next day, they arrived in the city and stopped by Camillo's store. The store was much more crowded than before, thanks to Izo's quality work. Since they were now working with the Count's family, they were able to expand the business. Camillo also wanted to talk about the strange ore that Izo had asked about earlier. Camillo said that there is some information, but it is not accurate. But the master said that Apoitakara will soon be in the capital. Apoitakara is a legendary metal band. In this world, this metal was only mined in the north. Camillo could hold it for Izo if he found it. Izo was grateful for the opportunity. After saying their goodbyes, they drove home. While Izo was in the capital, he left all the work in the blacksmith shop to the girls. He was grateful to them too, because they gave him something to sell. Reich was glad that Camillo had given them the information about the ore. Diana said that she could learn about the ore from her brother. The capital was a big city, so it might have been like looking for a needle in a haystack. although this city was also quite lively. Suddenly, Izo saw a small group of adventurers and started to think. In this world, Izo was determined to live like a blacksmith. He didn't need anything else in this life. But if he had obtained some other ability, then maybe he would have traveled as well, and his life would have been different somehow. Samia looked at Izo and asked him if he wanted to travel. He said no. Izo was born into this world for something completely different. Besides, Izo thought he'd had enough adventures already. He wasn't lying. Vit had actually died once before. Samia looked at Izo and walked on. Rika was looking at Izo strangely. Every time he left, Reik was afraid that Izo would never come back. She was sure that Samia was also thinking the same thing, and Izo didn't even think about it. Diana agreed with Reik's statement. Izo had indeed disappeared from his previous world, but this time it was different. He wasn't going to abandon his family. The girls cheered up a little and returned home. As they unloaded the cart, Samia smelled rain. It looked like it was going to rain for a long time in the direction of the wind. About a week, like Samia said. Even if it rained for more than 3 days, it was still necessary to collect water the next day. As a result, it started raining heavily. As Samia had said, the rain was long and never-ending, and Izo couldn't even go hunting. In order not to sit idle, they all harvested metal leaves together. Diana was surprised that they even made the sheets of metal themselves. They were strong. It was still raining the next day. Izo asked everyone to start creating basic models. And Izo himself wanted to start creating his new knife. He used his old knife in the capital to create a sword. After choosing a piece of iron, Izo started working. When he finished his work, he noticed a steady gaze on him. He turned and saw Reik's gaze on him. She said that when Izo worked in earnest, he produced a work of art. Although Diana didn't fully understand, she also said that the knife looked very beautiful. Although Samia didn't know much about it either, she was also sure that it was a masterpiece. Izo liked being praised. But despite all the praise, he couldn't forge such a knife in the city. So he had to use his old knife to forge a sword. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made it. It seemed to him that he could only forge the best quality products at home. When Izo worked at home, he was more relaxed and could easily forge anything. He was glad that he hadn't lost his skills. But no matter what, he was interested in the reason. The rain continued to fall for several more days, and Izo and the girls forged new items. It felt like it would rain forever. And finally the rain stopped and the sun came out. Everyone was happy. It was time for Samia to go hunting, and Diana wanted to go with her. They were full of energy, as always. It seems that they were glad that Izo lived these days together with them. When Samia and Diana went hunting, Reik and Izo were working in the workshop. As the two of them worked, the hammer blows sounded like music. It seems that Reik thought so too. After a while, Izo suggested that Rika finish up and get something to eat. As they ate, Izo asked Reik if she would like to go for a walk like the others. She stayed in the smithy all day, except when she went into town with Izo, or when she went out to wash. After a little thought, Reik realized that this was true, but the dwarves had such a life and everything was fine with them. She worked with Izo and learned a lot, and she loved it. If that was the case, then that was fine with Izo. After a while, they finished their work for today. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. A familiar, loud, feminine voice. When they opened the door, they saw a familiar figure. It was an old friend of theirs, Helen. Izo was glad that she came and let her in. Izo asked Helen why she was here. She said that she had a long hike ahead of her. So I decided to stop by Izo's for a diagnostic, and if Izo found something, Helen would ask him to fix it. Izo picked up one of the swords and examined it carefully. Suddenly, he asked Helen if she used it often. She said that she had been working out continuously for about a week since she started training. After that, Helen also had a run-in with bandits nearby, which she said could be called the same training session. There was almost no damage to the blade, only minor damage. Izo wondered how hard she was swinging that sword. It is very difficult to deal any damage to this sword. Helen said that this sword was perfect. It made her feel invincible. He had saved Helen's life many times with his sharpness. Izo was glad that his swords were doing some good. Helen didn't know how to express her gratitude. She held out her hand and gave Izo a firm handshake. Izo carefully examined the swords and said that they could have served Helen for a long time in this condition, but just in case, Izo still wanted to fix them. He asked Helen to wait a bit. She wanted to see his work, and Izo gave her permission. Izo picked up one of the swords and a hammer and carefully began to repair all the damage. There were almost no problems with the sword. It fixed minor scratches and damage. After finishing one, Izo gave it to Helen to evaluate. She had the feeling that the sword was as good as new, but Izo was more surprised that Helen could see the difference. He asked if Helen needed to fix the scabbard, but she said that it was already like home to her and there was no need to fix it. After that, Izo started on the second sword. Izo asked Helen if she liked watching it. Then she said that yes, it made her feel like an artisan. She often saw her father working as a saddler. She had to leave home for some reason, but she really enjoyed watching her father work. She asked Izo if he wanted to ask why she left the house. But Izo could see how nervous she was, and he said it wasn't polite to pry into a woman's past. It seems that Izo has already had a bad experience. Now Izo was done with the sword, and all that remained was to sharpen it. Suddenly, Samia and Diana returned home. Diana was very surprised that the real Sword of Thunder was in front of her eyes. Then Izo suggested that instead of paying, Helen could train with Diana. Diana wouldn't have minded the suggestion. Helen happily agreed to these terms. Since Diana only used one sword, Helen only took one as well.
While Izo finished his work, Helen and Diana sparred.
After a while, everyone was done with their business. It looks like Helen smashed Diana to smithereens. Izo asked Helen about Diana. She said that she has a good base, but there are unnecessary movements. Beautiful, but pointless. If you give her time and a lot of practice, she will definitely succeed. Diana was a little embarrassed, but Helen gave an accurate assessment of Diana's swordsmanship skills. Izo would have expected nothing less from a veteran of battle. Helen noticed that for a person from the palace, Diana really was very strong. It could be said that she was the strongest of them all. Helen asked Izo that he was training her. Her feints were very similar to his, so she could easily read them. Izo was surprised that Helen was able to remember the fighting habits of someone she had fought once. Diana asked Izo if it was true that he and Helen had survived the battle for a full 15 minutes. He said that yes, Helen was his first opponent with a pair of weapons. Helen offered to fight Izo again, but he turned her down. At first, he was a blacksmith and considered himself no match for a combat veteran. It was also quite late, so he suggested that Helen spend the night with them. Even it might be dangerous for her to walk through the forest at night. They had room for one guest. Helen was delighted and accepted their invitation. Izo wanted to go to town tomorrow so he could take Helen with him. The next day, Helen went into town with the others. After they had already passed the fast, Helen separated from them. Izo told her to come back alive and well, and they went to Camillo's store. When Izo was sitting at home during the rain, he made a halberd and brought it to Camillo. Izo wanted Camillo to sell her to the Count. It would be perfect for the city guard. Camillo also mentioned a poitakara. He said he hadn't got it yet, but he had something else. Camillo placed the small bundle in Izo's hands. Opening the cloth bundle, Izo saw a piece of mithril ore. Camillo wanted him to forge a rapier out of this ore. Izo asked if he could put his logo in an inconspicuous place, as he usually did. Camillo let him do it. When they were done, Izo and the girls went home. He couldn't wait to get home and start working on something other than steel. Today, Izo, along with everyone else, wanted to conquer mithril. Reich had never seen anyone work with mithril, not even at home. She could learn a lot today. Diana and Samia also wanted to see their work. Silver begins to melt at the temperature at which iron can be processed. With mithril, it was different. Izo was supposed to start forging when he reached a temperature just below that of processing steel. Izo took one hit on mithril. Normally, it was already possible to change the shape of steel from such a blow, but there were no changes on mithril. With a couple more punches, Izo understood. Mithril was unruly, it was difficult even with his hammer. After 4 or 5 strokes, he was already cooling down. There will be a lot more problems with it. Reich said that it would be too much for an ordinary blacksmith to handle mithril. It was the first time Izo had encountered such material since entering this one. It was going to be hard, but Izo wasn't going to give up. He had the ability to cheat and everything he needed. Diana and Samia watched with interest. The mithril gave easily, but quickly cooled down. Effectively, Izo could only make 2 or 3 strikes. But with his eyes, Izo could see the structure of the material. Mithril didn't have the roughness of steel, so he could immediately concentrate on lengthening the material. Izo concentrated and could see the smallest detail. He would conquer mithril with his power. The girls were enjoying Izo's work, and the sound of the hammer was like music. They had been watching him since lunch and were very interested. Izo asked Reich to prepare a whetstone. Izo decided to skip the quenching process since this material was already strong. There was no need for quenching. The materials in the other world were on a completely different level. Izo's senses told him that if he let his guard down even a little, the whole thing would be ruined. Izo was focused until the very end, never relaxing for a moment. After a while, the blade was ready. Diana really wanted to try it out. Since only the blade was ready, the pen and everything else still needed to be finished. Izo had heard that mithril weapons were light as a feather. Diana took the blade and went outside. Outside, she braced herself and lunged. I wonder what her impression was. Lately, Samia had been intimidated by Diana's gaze. Izo didn't know what she was talking about. Samia explained that Diana seemed to be watching her. She didn't feel any hostility from her, but it wasn't a little scary. Reg didn't really notice something like this, but Samia was a beastman, and she was quite sensitive to this kind of thing. Diana came into the room and asked what they were doing. Samia was a little scared, so Izo suggested that Samia ask her herself. Then she asked Diana what was going on. Thinking about it, Diana realized exactly what Samia meant. Diana apologized to her, but Samia wasn't sure what she meant. Then Diana told me. Samia was very nice. She had fluffy ears, a cute ponytail that wiggled back and forth, and a fur that looked very soft and silky. Touching other people without their permission wasn't nice, especially if she was totally against it. Samia allowed Diana to touch her ears, and she was very happy. Diana threw a couple more punches. Her movements were familiar, and she and her brother Marius were very similar in fencing. Izo immediately recalled the gruesome scene of Carol's murder. Weapons are just tools that hurt people and take their lives. Whether it is a small knife or a sword, it is not so important if their purpose is the same. Dropping these thoughts, Izo asked Diana how she felt about the blade, since a light sword should be much easier to handle. This was noticeable because Diana was now using less force to hold the sword in her hand. This made it much easier and more comfortable to move around with him. Samia and Reich prepared a small log and asked Diana to cut it down. Diane turned to the log, and with a single lunge, she easily pierced the log. It was just unbelievable. Diana pulled out the blade with the same ease and was startled. She didn't even notice that she was chopping it, as if she hadn't struck at all. Izo went to Diana and examined the blade. It was intact. There were no deformations from the impact, and no chips on the blade also appeared. Then they did another test. They brought an ingot of metal to the bar and asked Diana to cut it. With a lunge, she sliced through the ingot just as easily. And even so, there were no chips on the blade. They were not damaged in any way. Izo reflected that whether it was a kitchen knife or depending on the purpose of the tool, it could both benefit people and take their lives. Looking at it, Izo realized that he had created something that he had never been able to do before. Izo didn't want to try such a powerful weapon on just anyone. Izo didn't think that just one sword could turn the world upside down, as he had previously made custom-made sword models in the past. Usually, he made them out of steel, but if you create a weapon from mithril or a stronger material, then this weapon in the wrong hands can destroy not only people. It won't bend, and its sharpness can mow rocks like grass. With this weapon, nothing will stop the carrier, and maybe one day this sword will decide the fate of the world itself. He hadn't known before that his hands were capable of creating something like this. Still, he must not use his gift too carelessly, for one day his wares may decide the fate of the world itself. Is it really up to him to decide who gets this sword? The girls looked at Izo, who had a thoughtful expression on his face. Then Samia asked him if everything was all right. The feeling that Izo was feeling now was different from the one he felt when he was crafting swords for Helen. He was worried that he had already interfered with history when he created the Amor family heirloom. Izo was worried. Who would have thought that this job would cause him so much stress? He wanted to share his experiences with others. Turning to the girls, he asked them, should he sell this sword? This sword could fall into the wrong hands and bring trouble to this world. They had all seen the destructive power of this sword, even though it went hand in hand. Izo was afraid of making a mistake and selling this sword to the wrong person. Will Izo be able to bear the consequences of his choice? That worry was eating at him from the inside out. He told them everything. Izo felt pathetic. He was a man whose mind had already reached the age of 40, and the problems had to be left to others. He was afraid that if he showed them such a pathetic side of his personality, they might become disillusioned with him and leave their home. but he couldn't do otherwise, although he has created amazing products before. But this was a completely different level of experience. The girls laughed. They were glad that Izo was just as ordinary as the rest of them. They said it was hard not to think about it when you were creating such amazing pieces. Reich said that she thought Izo didn't think about it at all, but she understood that every blacksmith felt such a responsibility. This feeling was instilled in her by her brothers since childhood. Diana said that the creator is not omniscient and cannot know who will eventually get his sword, the defender of the weak or the bloody tyrant. After all, the blacksmith is not responsible for the thoughts of the customer. Izo shouldn't have burdened himself with such questions. Samia came up to him and told him that if he had any bad thoughts again, he could share with them. They were family. Izo was surprised that his feelings were accepted. He thanked them and cheered up a little. He was glad to have such an amazing family. He felt better now. In this world, Izo was given the role of creator, and this is his job. He will create what he wants for the sake of his customers, whoever they are. After all, he had a family that supported him. Izo finally smiled. If they were around, Izo would be capable of anything. The next day, they began the final stage, creating the guard and handle. Mithril was harder to work with, so they used steel. On the guard, Izo made an emblem of a fat cat, so that no one would notice. All the work was finally done. Now Izo was ready to go out into the world without hesitation. Rapier hit the store Camillo, and Izo told all the latest news. There, Izo received a new assignment from His Excellency the Count to restore the halberd. According to Camillo, there were no movements towards war or conquests. But on the border areas, there were small skirmishes with monsters every now and then. It was also said that there were clashes between people over the ownership of water. On the way home, Izo noticed that Diana was looking for something again. Samia said that once they came across cubs, and now he often came to them. Then they met a she-wolf and her cubs. The local wolves were quite intelligent, so it was possible to tame someone. When everyone got home and started doing their own thing, there was a sudden knock on their door. Opening the door, Izo saw an elf girl with long ears. She was holding a small bundle of cloth in her hands. She asked if this was Izo's blacksmith shop. After making sure of this, the girl wanted to ask them about one thing. They went inside, where the girl told them everything. She placed a small bundle of cloth on the table and unfolded it. Inside were small fragments of a sword and a hilt. It was a broken mithril ore sword. The girl wanted to fix it, so she came to this place. The blade of the sword was thin, but as long as a broadsword. She wanted to restore it completely to its original state, but if that wasn't possible, she was willing to accept it. Izo asked the girl if she had come alone. She said that she used concealment magic on the way here and came alone. After receiving the answer, Izo accepted the order, which made her happy. The elf wanted to restore the sword as soon as possible, so the deadline was about 2 weeks. Diana and Samia returned home. It seems that the hunt was successful. Samia had several dead birds in her hands. When they entered the house, they saw a beautiful elf who was their customer. Izo told them that she came here to repair the sword. The elf girl introduced herself. Her name was Liddy. Diana introduced herself and curtsied. Samia looked at Diana and introduced herself as well, trying to curtsy. Rika also introduced herself to Liddy after a while. Izo said they were his family. Liddy had one more request. She would like to see the work of reconstructing the sword she brought go on every day. It was very important to her. Izo didn't mind if the sword was so important to her. Liddy was grateful for the permission. Since Liddy had to live somewhere, she asked Izo to lend her a corner in their garden. She wanted to settle in and live there for the time being, if they didn't mind. Izo said that there might be monsters roaming around, and it was quite dangerous for her. Liddy was surprised and said that considering the density of magic in this place, they shouldn't be anywhere near the house. Izo was very surprised by Liddy's words. She said that the Dark Forest is a place where a large amount of magical power is accumulated. Especially a lot of magic was accumulated around the house where Izo and the girls lived. For this reason, there were no trees growing here, and the beasts couldn't get close. Liddy thought that this was the reason why they all chose this place. Izo said that he didn't know anything about it at all, he just picked the first place he came across. Liddy said that when she saw Izo hit the rapier, she was completely convinced that he was proficient in using the magic that had accumulated in this place. Izo didn't suspect anything and said that it was all due to his intuition. He couldn't say that it was because of his cheating ability that the goddess had given him. Izo didn't feel comfortable lying to Liddy, but he had to. As it turned out, due to the magic power, Izo felt at home not like everywhere else. At home, everything was a little different. If Liddy's words were to be believed, that might be the reason why in the Eimer family's blacksmith shop, Izo was unable to produce a top-quality sword like he did at home. It was precisely because of the weak magic power in the capital that he was unable to create such a stunning masterpiece. Izo suggested we leave this conversation for later. Izo couldn't afford to let Liddy sleep outside, so he suggested that she stay in the guest room. But Liddy was a little uncomfortable, so she asked, "Is it really possible for her? He still had 3 wives." Liddy's words surprised Izo and the girls, and they were very confused. Izo tried to explain everything to Liddy. He said they were his family, not his wives, and apparently Camillo had told her all sorts of things. When Liddy realized that she was wrong, she apologized to everyone. Now all the misunderstandings were resolved. From now on, they will live together with the guest. So it will be while she watches them work. They seemed happy. Izo wanted to finish his work for the day, and he wanted to have dinner with everyone and then relax. Today, Samia brought game, some large leafy falcons. These birds had as many as 5 wings. Izo wanted to ask Diane and Reich to prepare the guest room. Samia and Izo were supposed to take care of the bird. After a moment's thought, Izo wondered if elves ate meat at all. Liddy wanted to help too. She said that she had already plucked birds in her village. Samia said that she used to think that elves don't eat meat. Liddy explained that despite the fact that everyone thinks so, and this is a stereotype, it was just that most often it was easier to get vegetables or other plant food in the forests where the elves live. Izo was surprised that there were also stereotypes in this world. He asked Liddy if it was true that elves also eat meat. Liddy said that in their forest they hunt deer and birds, but their main food was potatoes. They grew them in the fields. Normally, no one went fishing in the elven villages, although sometimes they could catch fish. It made sense, since it was stupid to rely only on hunting, especially for most settlements. Izo happily accepted Liddy's help. She picked up one of the birds, and then they all went about their business. After they finished and set the table, they started their meal. Then we went to bed. The next day, after breakfast, everyone went to the workshop. They started their long repair of the Liddy sword. First, they had to put it together like a jigsaw puzzle. After reviewing all the details, Izo set to work. He lit the stove and used magic to set the right temperature. With steel, he could only ruin the already broken sword even more. And after joining, it is very difficult to restore the sword to its former strength and sharpness. But Izo was working with mithril, so there's no need to worry about that. It was difficult to build a mithril sword, but not impossible. Taking the base of the sword, Izo set to work. When Izo was heating the base, Liddy asked Izo if he was using magic. He said that he could use it, but only fairly simple magic, such as kindling a flame or cooling it with the help of wind. Liddy said that this alone requires some preparation. But it was strange that he had almost no knowledge of the local magic power that surrounded their home. Liddy said her words with a smile, but her smile scared Izo a little. In fact, Izo just got all this power from the goddess. The others couldn't use magic. After the mithril has reached the desired temperature, Izo began work on the reconstruction. He and Reich would carefully put the pieces together, then beat them off with the hammer a little at a time. While Reich held on, Izo tried to put the pieces together. Steel is much harder to hold together than mithril, so they should have been able to do it. Izo knew that he could have used a special tool, but that would have made temperature control much more difficult, and then he wouldn't have been able to use the hammer. So Izo worked carefully by hand. They have already gone beyond the temperature required for operation. If they continue like this, they will only break the sword completely. Hearing this, Liddy became nervous and approached Izo. She asked him that she couldn't fix the sword after all. He explained to her that just getting the job done would be harder than Izo had anticipated, and it would take a little longer. Liddy calmed down and continued to watch them work. Izo would like to test the limits of this metal, but at this rate, it would only break the sword completely. So Izo had to be more careful than usual. Liddy noticed Izo's look and said that her guess was correct. After all, he was actually able to see the flow of magic power. Izo clarified that he didn't quite understand what she meant. Then she said that he struck so that he could accurately hit the stream. Izo thought for a moment and said that he was really trying to keep some shiny particles from falling apart. Liddy came over and said that was it. She explained that this was the magic power she was talking about. It looked like Izo could actually see the magic power, but he probably just didn't realize it. All this time, the light that Izo could see was magic power. Looking at the sword, Izo saw the glow of many small particles, but he saw something else as well. They decided on one question, and Izo thanked Liddy for it. Izo carefully examined the pieces he had already put together. The connected parts held up pretty well. The particles of light that were magic power also didn't disperse, but there were gaps at the junction. Even if everything looks perfectly bonded, there are gaps of magical power at the joints. Even if you perfectly restore the shape of the blade, then using this sword for a long time is unlikely to work. Izo was a little tired and didn't notice it right away. Now he wanted to figure out how to fix it. After a moment's thought, he decided to turn to Liddy. He showed the blade to her and asked her to look at it carefully. Looking carefully, Liddy saw a gap of magical power at the junction. After that, he gave the blade to Rika and asked if she could see. She didn't quite understand it. Samia and Diana were just ordinary hard workers, so they didn't understand what they were talking about at all. These breakups were not good news. Izo told Liddy that if just getting back in shape wasn't enough. Maybe if Izo hits the same places with his hammer again and again, he might be able to restore the flow of magic. Or Izo could just restore the original shape of the sword. It was up to Liddy to decide that. She considered the question seriously. After a while, she made a decision. Liddy asked Izo to restore the magic in the sword as well. As Izo had thought, if only the blade's shape was restored, it wouldn't be enough. After confirming this, Liddy put her trust in Izo. It was the most important thing for her to be able to use this sword like before. Izo understood the final task and told Liddy to rely on him. Cheered up, Izo tried again. He shouldn't have let down Liddy's expectations. Izo didn't want to embarrass the name of their forge. First, Izo wanted to restore the sword's original shape. To do this, he made a replica out of wood, using all the sword fragments to recreate its original shape, heating the mithril and forming it into a plate. The pieces started to fuse together a bit after Izo and Reich tied straw around the sword and then heated it up again. Then they continued to forge again. They put the mithril shards together, a few punches, they flipped over and over. As they continued to work, the sun had already set outside the window. The next day, they continued their work. Samia and Diana went out to pick fruit. After striking a few more times, Izo noticed that the sword had become heavier. He decided to ask Liddy about it. Izo said that there was more magic power in the blade. He could directly feel the blade getting heavier. Taking a closer look, Liddy said that there really is more magic in the blade. According to her, Izo was very skilled with magic. As it turns out, mithril is getting heavier due to its magic power. Although Izo didn't feel that way with a thin sword. Perhaps it was because of the difference in the purity of the metal. In any case, it was necessary to continue working on the blade. Izo had never noticed this before, but it seemed like he was putting in more effort with each swing of the hammer. And the magic power particles were also getting bigger with each strike. Izo's work carefully, the durability of mithril, also grew. This is a very hard job, but for some reason, Izo's smile never left his face. After a while, their work for today was finished. They will need some more time to finish their work. When Izo wanted to clean up the workshop, Samia came to them. She said that when she came back, she tore her bag. Everything she carried there was now scattered everywhere. She asked Izo to help her fellow them. Izo agreed and asked Reich to clean up the workshop alone while he helped Samia. Liddy wanted to help Rika. Samia escorted Izo to the place where her things were. Diana was crouched in the bushes, looking like she was watching something. As they got closer to her, Izo saw what Diana was looking at. Samia rummaged in the bag, pulled out a small piece of dried meat, and threw it into the bushes. 2 small puppies came out. They smelled the meat and went out to eat. Diana was taken aback by their cute appearance. Fluffy ears, a cute tail, and a pair of beady eyes. They were so cute and Diana and Azo liked them so much. Suddenly, Diana noticed one of the pups barking and running up to her. The puppy cocked its head to one side, which startled Diana. She was overwhelmed by a storm of emotions, and without realizing it, she was hitting Izo on the arm. It looks like his shoulder is going to hurt later. After they packed their bags, they returned home. Reich and Liddy were waiting for them at home. Reich said that Liddy tried to explain to her exactly how to use magic power. But despite Liddy's explanation, Reich didn't understand how to catch this flow of magic power at all. Liddy said that it was easier for dwarves to understand magic power if they listened to what the ore they worked with in the forge told them. Liddy asked Izo for permission to teach Riko while she was here. After receiving permission, Reich became inspired and began to listen carefully to all of Liddy's explanations. Izo, with the skills he received from God, couldn't learn much from Liddy, but Reich was a completely different matter. By listening to Liddy's explanation, Reich will be able to forge a unique weapon and will be able to gain the confidence to return home. A thought occurred to Izo. After taking some materials, Izo began to craft whatever came to mind. After a while, everything was ready. He set down a bowl for water and salt. It was a small wooden house, standing in a corner under the roof of the workshop on a shelf. Shinto altar, although the shape was a bit strange, but basically everything is fine. Since Izo was a former Japanese, he could feel more at ease in the workshop. He wondered what the gods of this world would think of it. He hoped they would like it too. When everyone else got up, they looked into the workshop and saw that Izo was doing something strange. When he noticed that he was being watched, he was surprised. Reich asked him what he was doing right now. Izo said that it was a ritual to worship the gods from his homeland in the north, although this was only half a lie. Diana asked about just worshiping this little house. Izo said that they believed that every house, even so small, could become a temple where spirits or gods live. Reich asked if there really was such a custom in the north. Izo clarified that this may have been accepted only at his home. Samia and Liddy also wanted to try praying like Izo. Then, after a brief explanation of exactly how to do it, all 5 of them prayed again. In fact, Izo didn't know if there were any gods in this world, but maybe at least now one has appeared. After they finished their prayers, Izo called everyone to breakfast. From the temple, in which there is no owner, little escaped. But if someone is there, they can help Izo finish the job, or help them while hunting, or maybe to keep them always full, and to keep the Izo family always smiling. Today, Izo wanted to continue working. Reich was supposed to be helping him with the blade. Samia and Diana had to work on the wood for the hilt. He will continue working with Mithril for several days. At the very least, Izo will try to get closer to the original form of the sword. When working with Mithril, you need a lot of concentration. It won't work if Izo just works without thinking with his head. Just a little too much force, and he could ruin everything. If Izo understood exactly how magic worked, it would be easier. But he wouldn't be a blacksmith if he only relied on magic. There were few blacksmiths in this world who could handle Mithril. The work was difficult, but the sound was so beautiful. When Izo took a short break for a drink, he asked Liddy if she liked watching him work. She said that the usual work of a blacksmith may really seem boring, but Izo's work was far from unusual. She really liked it. Moreover, for elves who live for a very long time passes much faster than for humans. Liddy looked young, but she looked older than she looked. She also liked the sound. According to her, there is no blacksmith in the village of elves who creates such beautiful sounds when working. Izo asked Liddy about the fact that the sound was really different from that of the other forges. She said that Mithril makes a much more pleasant sound if you use magic well. This greatly motivated Izo. He was good at putting magic into Mithril, so he wasn't wasting his time and effort. But if Izo bullied Gnome too much, he could ruin everything. So that all the workers of the blacksmith shop would not lose their morale, they decided to take a day off and refresh themselves. The next day, they went back to their work. Yesterday, Izo finally got some rest and felt a little better. As he was walking to the river to get water, he suddenly heard singing. Liddy was standing by a tree, humming a tune. After greeting her, he asked her what she was doing. Liddy said that since there is a lot of magic power here, she enjoyed it. There was no need to be afraid of monsters because the probability of their appearance is unlikely. If a monster suddenly appeared somewhere nearby, it would mean that somewhere nearby there is a cave where magic has stagnated. Perhaps that's why that bear was so aggressive. Izo asked Liddy if they should set up a sanctuary, but she didn't recommend it. Not the fact that they could handle emergencies in case of anything. Liddy also explained that elves also need to absorb magic power in addition to eating. This was the reason why there were so few elves in the cities. Lid asked if there was anything else he didn't want to ask. Izo heard everything he needed to hear, so she could say no more. Izo managed to bring the mithril to the required size, and thanks to the wooden shape, it turned out to give the sword its original appearance. The final stage of work has come. Izo wanted to ask Liddy how the sword broke. She didn't mind answering his question, so she told him everything. According to her story, there was magic involved, so she couldn't tell everything in detail. To master a mithril weapon, you need to infuse magic power into it. This sword was highly prized in their village, but something happened to it. The magic was overdone, and the sword ended up shattering. For this reason, you need a blacksmith who can restore it and make it at least as good as the original. Izo wanted to increase the amount of magic power he could hold. After all of Liddy's explanations, Izo set to work. There were just under 2 weeks left until the end of the work period, and after a while, all the work was ready. Izo let Liddy see the results. She examined the sword and said with a smile that it was better than she wanted. Liddy was very happy with her work. The magic power reserve was much larger than the originals. Izo helped her a lot. As for the payment, Izo was fine with what Liddy offered, 5 gold coins and 2 pieces of wood. Izo took what she offered and gave Liddy 1 gold coin. He asked her to use it to buy seeds and sprouts in her village, and when she did, she could give them to Camillo in the city. After making an agreement, Liddy wrapped the sword in a cloth and went back to her home. She said she had a lot of fun. When they said their goodbyes, everyone asked her to come to them again. They wanted to learn elven swordsmanship from her and get a few more lessons in magic. She could come to them not only for an order, but they were always waiting for her there. After they had restored the elven blade in blacksmith Izo, they had returned to their normal routine. One of their everyday days, they went to the store to see Camillo. Izo asked Camillo about the rumors about thieves in the city. Camillo said that someone attacked, did not take the property, and left it alive. Moreover, the people who were attacked don't remember his voice or face. It was strange. At first, Diana suspected Carol of the attack, but if he had had such experienced people, he would have hired them even earlier. Izo's house hasn't been damaged in any way yet, but they'll be careful. Camillo also mentioned that he had new horses and suggested that Izo take a look at them. After a moment's thought, Izo agreed that they could use an extra horse, as the heavy traffic period was about to begin. They went down to the stable, where an unusual beast was standing in front of them. Camillo said that this is not really a horse, but a running dragon. Although it's not really a dragon, but rather a lizard like that. He looked pretty cute, and both Diana and Izo immediately liked him. Izo asked what they ate and how often. Camillo said that they are omnivorous in vegetables and meat and grass and cereals. He hadn't eaten much in all the time he'd spent with Camillo, so they hadn't eaten much. Izo asked why Camillo didn't want to keep it. He said that Running Dragon would stand out too much in his stable. Izo wanted to know the price of this dragon. The dragon wasn't cheap, so they agreed that Izo would pay him next time. Camillo didn't mind and went to prepare the bridle and everything else for him. Diana wanted to pet him. Since the dragon was their new family member, he let Diana pet him. It was warm to the touch. The dragon was constantly making cute noises. After looking at Diana, Reik and Samia also wanted to pet him. They all got into the cart and harnessed the running dragon. Reik was sitting in the driver's seat. Izo asked her how she felt. According to her, he perfectly understands how to pull a cart. Good luck quickly, but once again does not swing. When they got home, Izo wanted to train him some more. Sometimes it accelerated too much. Diana compared it to the time when she had to hide in Camille's carriage. The cart was supposed to be able to handle the 4 of them exactly, but what if it had to carry something heavy? They will definitely have to work on the load capacity of the cart. A short time later, they had already entered the forest, which was twice as fast as if they had to walk. It seemed that the little dragon was calmer in the forest. But it's best not to let your guard down until he's done something dangerous, but still. Suddenly, they ran into a large piece of wood, and the cart was lifted a little into the air. They were shaken up a lot, but they were fine. Izo now definitely wanted to improve the suspension of the wagon, as it would cause injuries. They came back much faster than usual. The sun was still high. They still had plenty of time, so much to do. Taking a bucket of water, Izo wet a cloth and began to gently wipe the dragon. After that, he wanted to bring him meat from home. He could eat grass as well, but it was better to treat him to meat at least once in a while. Diana brought the meat and asked him his name. They didn't know if he was a boy or a girl. It was impossible to tell by eye. Diana said that she had once heard an aristocrat call his horse Hennig Hermann III. Such a name was hard to remember. It wasn't worth asking Izo to come up with a name, and then you'd have to worry about it. Samia said that he is constantly purring, so she can call him Urchik. Diane and Rika liked her idea. The name was cute and really suited him. Such a name was easy to remember. Now he had a new name, which he also seemed to like. Tomorrow, Izo wanted to make a small house. Today, they could take care of themselves and rest. The next day, Izo went to the river to get water. He noticed Urchik and suggested that he go with him to get water. Izo took the bucket and hung it around his neck, which didn't seem too heavy for Urchik. They went to get water together. For Urchik, it was important to walk more and warm up. On this day, everyone worked on creating a house for Urchik. Fortunately, they had accumulated a lot of wood. It was only necessary to transport logs. They had an Urchik, so transportation wasn't a problem. Diana was touched by Urchik. It seems that she really liked him. After a while, they worked together, and thanks to Urchik, the work went very quickly. Urchik's new house was ready in 2 days. As of today, this was their new home. Here he could hide from the rain and sleep at night. It's always great to have a roof over your head. Urchik seemed to like his new home. He was a smart boy and understood them perfectly, or so they thought. Izo was glad that they had built the cabin so quickly. According to Samia, he worked harder than anyone else. She couldn't imagine where he'd learned all this. Izo still had knowledge from his previous life, so he used techniques and technologies that were not yet available in this world. Thanks to his abilities and knowledge, he can continue to do his job better and faster than most. But Izo didn't want to do anything out of the ordinary, or even adapt it to this world. The next day, Izo and Urchik went to get water. The next plan was to upgrade the wagon. It was necessary to protect the small of Izo's back and his family. When they are done with their work, they will return to their usual work in the workshop. For now, they were concentrating on that. Rika will have to work with metal, Izo asked her to. This didn't cause Reich much trouble. She was doing this as her duty as a disciple. In order not to shake so much during the trip, it was necessary to make a suspension. With Izo's resources, it might work. To begin with, Izo boiled water and used the heat to make the material bend. Fasten different bars together with nails. Assemble the front and rear wheels, then install the springs on the rear wheels. As a prototype, Izo made a cart with wooden wheels. After making a small cart, he attached it to the Urchik and asked him to check how it worked. Thanks to the help of Urchik, they chose the best prototype, and then it remains to do everything correctly and give the desired shape. Even with his knowledge from the previous world, it took a lot of effort. Even though people invented it all from scratch, without relying on past life knowledge. The people were amazing after all. They have always sought to ease their difficult lives. And in this world, this is also inevitable. The steel that Izo used as a material was no worse than the one he used for completing orders. Blacksmithing is very difficult and requires almost jewelry skills. Izo often had to solve even seemingly minor problems through trial and error. But thanks to his power, which was given to Izo by the goddess, this work was much easier. People achieved such results after 10 or even 20 years of hard work. But is it really worth calling this force your own? These thoughts never left Izo's mind. After a while, Samia and Diana called Izo over to eat, and it looked like Reich had prepared lunch. In a couple of days, he was supposed to finish the cart and return to his normal work. He was grateful to Rika for taking orders and to the others for helping out around the house. While working at the blacksmith shop, Reich also practiced controlling magic power, just as Liddy had taught her. She looked like she was having fun. Samia noticed that Reich had been making very nice knives lately, and Diana thought so too. After lunch, Izo decided to look at Reich's work. He picked up one of the knives, although it looked like the last one, but it felt very different. Rika still had a lot to learn. She wanted to create the perfect model, but this was already a great result. After a while, the cart was ready. It had comfortable seats and a place for the coachman. The cart was barely shaking when they started, and the seat was comfortable enough. Izo said that the wheels had springs, which made the cart almost not shake. And now it was possible not to be afraid for the luggage and go faster. The breeze blew pleasantly over them as they rode. Now, when the speed of transportation increases, even alone it will be possible to transport more goods and distribute information faster. This will definitely have a big impact on more than just their lives. It seemed to Izo that his existence wouldn't affect this world much. But here he saw with his own eyes how his knowledge is changing the world. A careless step aside and Izo could change everything. Urchik drove the cart expertly. When Izo came to see Camillo, he sold the goods he had brought. Camillo gave him a bag of coins and asked him to count them carefully. That was alright, so Izo decided to ask why Camillo had sold him the dragon for less than the market price. Camillo said that a nobleman ran out of money and sold it at a low price, after which Camillo resold it, so he only got a profit. Camillo asked Izo how he liked the dragon. He was smart and strong, a real helper. They were getting to the city faster than usual. Camillo also wanted to ask about the new wagon. He was curious about how it works. Izo had no doubt that Camillo would notice his new clothes and gave him a piece of paper that described how it worked. Izo suggested that Camillo make another similar cart for free. Camillo thanked him for the offer, but his conscience wouldn't allow him to get such a carriage just like that. There were a lot of new people in the city. According to Camillo, Marius has recently been busy developing the city, despite the fact that you often have to fight with demons on the border. And lately, bandits have been bothering us on the roads, and they don't seem to have been caught yet. They had finished shopping and the sun was still high, and they were on their way home when suddenly someone appeared in front of them. A mysterious figure in a cloak, sword in hand, threatened to stop the cart. They stopped and Izo looked around carefully. It doesn't look like there are any other bandits around, but what kind of bandit robs alone? There is no denying the possibility that these are the bandits that were talked about in the city. It was a surprise that she hadn't been caught yet. But what did she want? The mysterious figure told them to hand over their weapons. At first glance, this person was slightly stronger than Diana, but not as good as Helen, and Samia was also with them. Reich gave Izo her knife, and they threw it to the bandit. Looking at him, the bandit asked where they got this knife from. Izo said he didn't take it, he made it himself. He said they were on their way out of town and had sold everything. If she was interested in their product, then she needed to put the sword away. Izo invited her to sit down and talk for a while. She got on their wagon and said that she was looking for a weapon with such an emblem. The girls took out their knives and Izo said that he made them earlier. All the knives had the same logo on them. If that was the case, then she had a request for Izo. She wanted to ask them to make one such weapon. She didn't seem like such a bad girl, or maybe Izo was too trusting. He told her that he agreed to create a weapon, but there is one condition. She was supposed to come alone to his blacksmith shop in the Black Forest. He'd tell her how to get to her, and she was supposed to be there tomorrow. This condition suited the mysterious girl, and they parted on this.